Let's go. All right, everyone, welcome. Good evening. Welcome to another session with me, Kalu Aja. Of course, welcome to The Way I See It, our podcast, and of course, our weekly money space. So, this space, we're talking money, the economy, and finance. And I want to talk around how the economy affects your pocket. That's always our theme. How do these big topics that you hear all week affect you on a personal level? This week we're talking the Naira, right? But we're going to talk about the Naira in a very, very smart way, right? We don't want to talk about exchange rates. We want to just maybe review what the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, has been doing with some moves, right, that we have seen. The CBN has allowed oil companies to export dollars, i.e., the dollars that they make, and that's restricted the naira flows into Nigeria. If you send dollars into Nigeria, you're only going to get paid out in dollars. We want to explore these themes. We want to understand why the CBN is doing this. And I think in doing that, we're able to perhaps get a better picture of Nigeria's foreign exchange position, Nigeria's trade position, and of course, strategies that Nigeria is pursuing. So that way, you as an investor is able to also position yourselves going forward. Again, we're on YouTube. We're going to share the visuals. I love to share the visuals. I think it makes a good sense so that even if we're on Twitter, you can look at the visuals and you can follow and see the slides that we're sharing. Most of them actually just speak to what we're talking about. So if you're on Twitter or if you're on YouTube, you can actually see the visuals that we are sharing. I think that's just going to allow you to follow real on real time, and of course then see what we're talking about, right? I like visuals, so I'm just going to be sharing this tweet right underneath the actual space tweet today. So we're starting off our slide here is Naira supremacy versus the oil dollar freedom. That's what we're going to talk about today. And like I said, if you haven't been following the news, this past week, the CBN essentially said the oil companies, the international oil companies, are allowed to repatriate 100% of their dollar revenues. In the past, they could repatriate only 50%. 50%. Now they're going to repatriate 100%. So what's going on, right, with that? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We're going to find out as we go along. Also, the CBN then came and said, listen, if you are earning Naira, if you send dollars back to Nigeria, you would only be paid in Naira. Also, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are the risks? We're going to sort of review those as we go along, right? Okay, so Twitter is on, YouTube is on. Let's get going. So our slide is talking about why is the CBN doing this? It's a confidence sign by the Central Bank of Nigeria that is allowing the international oil companies to take money out of Nigeria. So let's give CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, their kudos. If you look at the slide I'm sharing, this is from the CBN governor. I'm quoting you, Yahoo Finance, and of course, Semaphore. Nigeria's central bank took net reserves. This is net reserves. Net reserves means we have some loans and then we have some earnings. If you net out our foreign reserve position for Nigeria, we went from about 3.99 billion, about $4 billion in 2023, to about 34 billion in 2025. That's over a 772% gain in the last 2 years. Let me say that again, right? And I'm sharing this on Twitter again so you guys can follow. We've gone from about 4 billion in 2023 in net dollar reserves in Nigeria to about 34.8 billion in reserves net in 2025. So CBN grew net reserves by about 772%. That's massive. That's really, really massive. So the CBN is feeling that it has enough net reserves that it can allow the international oil companies take out the dollars that they've earned. Because before this guideline was passed, what it meant was that if you sold oil, if you are, say, ExxonMobil and you sold oil, you sold $1 billion in oil, only $500 could leave Nigeria. 500 million was still in the CBN. So that sort of propped up the reserves. So when you saw the reserves back then, it also captures that only only 500 could leave, and the rest was back in Nigeria. Now they can take out everything. So what's going to be the effect if they take out everything? Clearly, if they take everything out, the reserves will sort of reduce a bit, right? Because now they can take out everything if they wanted to. Not saying that they would, but they could now take out 100%. So first of all, kudos to the CBN for just growing the reserves. How Mr. Cardoso done it? By just being more prudent with spending. The past governor was spending a bit too much ways and means. Mr. Cardoso has not done that, so he's kept a lid on the spending, and because he's kept a lid on the spending, you see the results in the net reserves. It goes back to the point we're making that we make generally that Nigeria's problem is the spending, not really the revenues. If we can go from 4 billion, I remember when we say we've gone from 4 billion, we've paid off the outstanding obligations to the airlines and to many companies, and yet he's still at 34 billion. So if he didn't pay them off, he would have been at maybe 60 billion, right? But this is net. I'm not picking just the gross, the net position. So big kudos to Mr. Cardoso for doing this. It shows that the issue again is spending. If Mr. Cardoso was the one probably managing the fiscal side, i.e., to say we're going to say yes and no to spending, perhaps will not be in sort of the debt mess that we find ourselves today. So that's a good point for us to make that. Listen, the issue is that the CBN feels emboldened because it has reduced spending enough that it's able to then say, yes, if you're an international oil company, you can take out money. But what is now, yeah, that's basically what we've shared. So if you look at this next slide that we've shared on YouTube and of course Twitter, the CBN has then said, yes, you can take out 100%. In the past, it was 50%. So reserves have grown. And because reserves have grown, the CBN is saying that, yes, if you have revenues, you can take them and you can go back to your country. So again, positive and very, it's a move that strengthens that the CBN is confident enough to allow sales to leave Nigeria without being too worried that this sales leaving Nigeria's oil sales leaving Nigeria would have a negative effect. Yes, there'll be the revenues, the reserves would fall, but the CBN is being very confident in allowing this to happen. Let's look at the flip side. And again, guys, I'm just going to do a quick introduction. And this is just me. Maybe I'll talk about 15 minutes. And if you want to speak, you have a comment, just hop right in and request to speak, and I'll ask you to speak. But I'm just going to be done in about 15 minutes, and then of course everyone can have a say. So what's the flip side? The flip side to this announcement is that if you are a Nigerian or if someone sends you money from abroad, you have to receive those funds in Naira, no longer dollars. I think it was under Mr. Emefiele, I think it was 2002 when we passed this the dollar policy that says if you send dollars to Nigeria, the CBN itself put out a circular that says the companies or the banks or the international money transfer organizations must give you dollars. They did that because they wanted dollars to come to Nigeria. Dollar wasn't coming to Nigeria because the naira was pegged. So the naira was pegged about 400 to $1. So why would anyone send dollar to Nigeria when you can send dollar through the black market or through crypto or through P2P, and you would get that dollars and exchange on the streets of Lagos for a higher rate? Why would I send through the bank? So the banks, nobody was sending money through Nigerian banks anymore, i.e. dollars. So the CBN came out and said, listen, if people send dollars, give them dollars. Because the CBN understands that Nigerians don't really spend dollars. We spend naira, but we receive dollars and want to hold our dollars to fight against inflation. So by the CBN saying, listen, if people receive dollars, give them their dollars. What the CBN is essentially saying is that allow dollars to come to Nigeria so that if dollars are in Nigeria, the dollar then gains more or less, right? That's the whole idea. And that's what happened in 2021, I believe. And they insisted, listen, you have to give people only dollars, not even naira, give them only dollars. And then, of course, we then saw that over the years, they then said you could give people dollars and naira, dollars and naira. And now it has changed back to you can only get naira. So if someone sends you money from Nigeria to Nigeria, right, you can only get naira from the banks. So what's the implication of this? If you get Naira, right, the dollars stay with the Central Bank of Nigeria. So you see, the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to replace the dollars leaving the international oil companies with the remittances coming to Nigeria. Remittances remain one of the most stable flows of foreign currency to Nigeria, even more than crude oil. They are stable, about 25, 20 billion every year. It just comes in. So if CBN is getting that money coming in, and remember, there's no more peg. So if the money comes in, even though you might even lose 1 or 2 Naira, you're not going to get paid 400 while black market is 1,000. The risk is this: if you go to the bank, if CBN comes and tells the banks, oh, sell at this rate, then there will be a black market. But if CBN keeps quiet and says banks should sell at whatever rate they want to sell, as long as Nigerians know that if I have Naira or if I send dollars to Nigeria, I can get the same rate as the black market rate. Nobody's going to demand for dollars anymore, as long as it's the same rate. But once there's a little gap, once it's a 1 Naira gap, 50 kobo gap, people will say, no, 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 give me my dollars or send to me via PPP. I'm going to go to the streets and change it. So the challenge for the CBN going forward now is to ensure that there is no gap. If it's 1,500 per dollar, let people get that. If it's 1,200, let folks get that. Once folks know that what they get from the banks is going to be exactly what they're going to get from the streets, no one's going to hold dollars. We don't spend dollars in Nigeria, we spend Naira. That's the key thing you have to understand. So that is a good, should we say, a good strategy by the CBN. Allow the oil companies to get their money. That boosts business confidence. But for Nigerians getting remittances, give them Naira. Again, the risk is that if you start to have a gap, then folks are going to demand dollars and they're going to get a black market. So this policy is a very, very simple policy, right? But what are the risks in this whole thing of dollars exchange? Remember, we're not talking exchange rate here. We want to review the entire market and see what are the risks that we could face if we have this open market where dollars can go out and Naira only can come into the economy. So I pulled the latest, this is November 2025. That is the latest, should we say, the remittance report, the capital importation report from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Again, I've shared on Twitter, also shared on Twitter, on YouTube. You can look at it, and you have to look at that chart to understand what's going on in Nigeria, right? Make sure you look at the high. Make sure you look at it and see what's going on. Now, dollars are coming into Nigeria. You saw that with the CBN net reserves, the first slide we shared, about 773% rise in CBN's net reserves. Where is that money coming from? The money is coming from, there are two ways really you can get money in Nigeria, right? There's export. So you are exporting crude oil and cocoa, you are getting dollars. You are maybe borrowing and you're getting remittances. Then there's what we call capital flows. Money is coming to Nigeria, either for investment, which we call foreign direct investment. Look at it this way: your brother is abroad, you want to start a transport business, so he buys you keke. That's foreign direct investment. He has sent you money. You use that money to buy an asset in Nigeria. You bought keke in Nigeria. Let's say keke was made in Innocent. You went to Innocent and bought a keke. That's foreign direct investment. Your brother is investing in a keke in Nigeria, right? That's FDI. That's what we call FPI, foreign portfolio investment. In foreign portfolio investment, your brother is not buying any assets. He's not buying keke in Nigeria. He's buying shares of Innocent or bonds of Innocent. So Innocent would sell him a bond or Innocent would sell him a share. He's not buying the physical motorcycle. He's buying their shares or their fixed deposits or their coupons. Those two are very, very different. That keke, if your brother wants his money back, he has to sell the keke, convert to cash, and send it back to him. It can't happen in one day. So if you buy a factory in Ogun State, if you are Nestle and you buy a factory in Ogun State, you can't sell that factory today and get your money tomorrow. So it tends to stay longer in the country. But if Nestle buys bonds, if Nestle buys Nestle shares in Nigeria, it can sell tomorrow and get his money in a week and move on. So FPI, foreign portfolio investment, is look at hot money, money that will come, money that will go. So you want it, but you don't want it too much because you want more of the long-term capital in your economy. So look at the chart we're giving you, that sort of segue, right? Look at the chart we're sharing. You look at the capital inflow to Nigeria. This is the latest, November 2025. You can see the lopsided nature of our capital inflows. What we want is the FDI. If you look at that chart, you can't find FDI because the scale is so small, you can't find FDI. What you are seeing is in gray is the foreign portfolio investment. So again, look, you have to look at the chart to sort of follow. On Twitter, I'm sharing it. Look at the chart. It's difficult to even see FDI. You see the gray lines, that is FPI. Then you see the other investment, that's the blue you are seeing. You can't even see FDI. The reason is that we've not attracted any, it's very minimal what attracted in FDIs in Nigeria when compared to FPIs in Nigeria. You can see the chart again. It's going up and down, up and down, up and down. I did some analysis, right? If you look at Nigeria from 2023, again, not being political, just giving you data. If you look at Nigeria from 2023, the highest FDI we have gotten from 2023 to date is not up to the lowest FDI we have gotten from 1999 till 2023. And this is in an economy where we're supposed to be, we're out there looking for investment with a very, very business friendly president. So the lowest FDI from 1999 till 2003, we've not gotten there from 2023 till date. That's FDI. But FPI, we're getting more money, but that money is short-term investments in bonds, loans, and all that kind of stuff. And if you look at it, I also give you the breakdown. 64% is going to the banking sector. So the banks are doing recapitalization, money is flowing to the banks. 64% of this FDI. First of all, FPI is 84% of what's coming to Nigeria. FPI, 82%. From that 82%, 62% going to banks. Financing, 24%. Manufacturing is 3%. Telecom, 2%. Trading, 1%. Equity, 1%. Olumide is shocked. Equity is 1%. So folks coming to buy shares in Nigeria is just 1%, right? So the bulk of the funds are going to the banking sector. That's why you see the banks have a lot of money, right? Banking sector. And so where's the money coming from? 52% come from the UK. 11% from Mauritius. Mauritius is an offshore place, so we really don't know where that's coming from. Mauritius, right? And then you can see US is 10%. So what's going on is that money is coming in, but that money is short-term money, money that they are chasing yields. And we're going to talk about yields in the slide. They are chasing yields. So that's why money is coming in there, right? They're not investing in the economy. They're not buying keke. They're not buying this. They're not buying that. They're just short-term. They are chasing yields. So the money is coming to the banks, to the investment. The manufacturing guys, the Dangote is 3%. The Airtel, 2%. Trading, 1%. Equity, 1%. So it's a big problem there for us, right? Big problem here for us. Let's go on. We're going to go very, very quick. Then we'll get Olumide in here to give us analysis of what I've said. Yeah. So let's look at the next slide. Let's talk about the Naira. Because when we now talk about the FPI, the CBN's foreign net reserves, what has been the effect on the Naira? Many of you are here to say, should I buy dollars? Should I hold dollars? Let's look at what the past has shown regarding the dollar. Again, I'm sharing on Twitter and on YouTube. Try to look at the visuals. Visuals really help you to really flow this stuff, right? If you look at the Naira in 1 month, it has, no, this is not the dollar. In 1 month, the dollar has gained 1.54%. This means the Naira has fallen. So in the last 1 month, the Naira has fallen, dollar has gained 1.54. Why? Because the Iranian war. A war has come, people want safety, so the people have run back to the US dollar. So they are selling Naira, running back to the US dollar. Before now, we saw President Trump saying he wants a weak dollar. Because he wants a weak dollar, you've seen the Naira gain. Look at the other charts I've shared with you. For 1 year, when was Trump elected? Look at the 1 year chart vis-a-vis dollar and Naira. The dollar has fallen 9.73 against the Naira. Look at the chart. When was Trump re-elected? Look at the Naira returns on the chart right here. So if you look at the trend, is always your friend. The trend has been, the Naira has been gaining as the US dollar has been weakening. Is the Naira gaining or is the dollar weakening? That's your argument. Which is happening more? What is the driver? We see visually the dollar is losing value if you look at it over a year. But is the dollar losing value because the dollar is falling, or because the Naira is gaining? That's your question, right? The trend is showing that something must have happened a year ago. And this year ago, we then saw Naira fall. Many things happened. Naira was also decoupled. It wasn't pegged a year ago. But look at when we've gone back to status quo, there's a war, uncertainty. Everybody has gone back to a dollar. Before that war, everybody was in Naira. So keep that in contemplation that this is what's going on in reality. This is not that, this is reality. And I wanted to share this next slide with you to show you what has happened to the Naira vis-a-vis the dollar over 10 years. So you hear me say on Twitter sometimes, keep your dollars close, keep your dollars close. Is there any data supporting that? Look at this next chart. 10 years ago, if you held dollars 10 years ago, you didn't convert, you did nothing. Look at the chart from 2027. You see your lines, you see the devaluations, you see it go up, you see it come down, you see it go up, you see it come down, till 2023 when we had the full devaluation and you saw the crazy moves going up and down. But your dollar return would have been 594% if you kept your dollar the way it was in 17. Again, Olumide is going to argue and say we can't keep dollars for 10 years, but that's not the point. The point is the Naira has been so volatile that if you simply left your returns in dollars and simply held it without just put it in your pillow or in the ground, 594% return. The point is the Naira fluctuates too much that just not just inflation. The policy behind Naira is in fluctuation that is difficult to really plan with it. So that's why you see the chart with uncertainty, people have run back to the dollar. And now we then see the CBN saying that we're going to now give a bit of confidence. That's what the CBN is doing, what they're doing. Confidence to the market to say, listen, if you're an international oil company, I want to take your money, go ahead and take it. You know how it is when you go to someone and you say, you are confident, so confident, you can say, if you want your money, I'll pay you. That's confidence. That's what the CBN is trying to project. If you want your money, we'll pay you. But money coming through Naira, we'll keep that dollars in dollars. We will not give you dollars. We will keep it in dollars and give you Naira. Again, that works as long as there's no black market. Why will there be a black market if you start to give people Naira below what the market is giving? So just showing you this data so you understand what's going on with the Naira and of course vis-a-vis with the dollar. Let me just share this last one on Twitter to show you the 594% if you simply just held the dollars that you had for the next 10 years. So again, what are the risks again to this policy? There are more. What other risks do we see? I think the biggest risk is that Nigeria is not exporting oil. Remember what we said. Nigeria, this policy of dollars to oil companies and Naira to Nigerians only works if you export, because the more you export, the more you grow your net revenues. Nigeria's oil exports are still low and falling. Nigeria, as at 2005 was doing nearly 2.6 million barrels a day. 2005. Right now, we're at 1.4, 1.3. So it's a bit risky, if you ask me, to say you're going to allow oil companies to take their money out when you have not increased exports. Big problem, if you ask me, because then you are saying that, listen, we have money to give you, but look at what the chart is showing. Your output is down considerably. Nigeria is not pumping oil. Even this war, unfortunately, there's a war, but Nigeria is not taking advantage of high oil prices because our output is less than 1.4 at a time when we should be pumping more, not pumping less. So if you look at the last report we got here, this was March 18th, Nigerian oil output fell 9% to about 1.48 million. So unfortunately, they were not taking advantage of the oil that we should have taken advantage of to make a killing, mind my French, in terms of what's happening in the market. So big risk there. Number two risk, the second major risk I'm going to share with you guys is that Nigeria is importing too much. And when we say import, we can always say, okay, we're going to stop import. Maybe we're importing cars, so we're going to stop import. Not when you're importing food. Nigeria is importing food. The reason why you see the fall in inflation is because Nigeria is importing food. Nothing wrong with that. I actually said Nigeria should import food, and that food price reduce inflation. And that's exactly what the government has done. This has got to be a short-term measure. So in the next medium term, we have to go now to investment in the value chain. But the food price has come down because we're importing food. But look at the food imports, look at the inflation. So food, look at the slide we're sharing. Food imports up, food inflation down. But what is the cost of this? We are importing about in 2025 about 78 trillion in food. So we've gone from about 2 trillion in 2022 to about 8 trillion in 2025. This is 2025, not 2026, 2025. So we're still doing the import. Why is there import? Because of insecurity in the farmlands. The farmers cannot grow food. So we have to import our tubers and our grains. So this is a big issue. If you are allowing dollars to go out, but you're importing food and the food imports are going up, you see where I'm going to with this? Good policy, but the reality is that we haven't solved this. CBN is trying to solve a problem it can't solve. It's doing its own is fine, but it's trying to solve a problem it can't solve. Two more slides, guys, and then we'll let Olumide come in here and give us his take. Two more slides, right? But this is the situation in Nigeria right now that we are importing a lot of food. You can't stop food imports. You can't. You can grow your own food and then reduce food import. But as long as people are hungry, you have to import food. Food imports are like importing a car. You can say don't import cars, no problem. But if you don't import food, then what are you? The country is not going to last. And this is from the US. This is on that crazy slide from the US DA. And they are warning Nigerians. And let me put that slide up just so you guys, if you're on YouTube, you see all the slides. Twitter, I'm sharing them as we go along. So you guys follow visually. The US is warning Nigeria that Nigerian grain output is going to fall 26, 27 as imports rise. Let me quote: Nigeria's grain production could come under pressure in 2026 2027 marketing year as a result of rising input costs, discouraging farmers from expanding planting even as domestic demand for staple foods going to grow. Many things they've said there. Number one, output is going to fall. Number two, costs are going to go up. And that even if, look at the key word they're saying there, even when demand is up, Nigerian farmers are not going to invest. This is the US telling you in plain language that you have issues. Hear what they are saying. This is not economics. They are saying that even when the output or the demand for food in Nigeria is up, Nigerian farmers are not going to plant food because the cost of planting food is more than the returns they're going to make. It's right there, black and white. I didn't say it. I'm quoting the USDA. This was before the war in Iran, when fertilizer prices have gone up. So before the war in Iran, the US is telling Nigeria that Nigerian farmers are not going to plant goods. That they didn't say insecurity. They said costs, input cost is too expensive to buy diesel, fertilizer, seeds. So because of this, farmers will say, wow, if I plant corn, people will buy, but I'm not going to plant corn because it's too expensive. It's too expensive. We always have a farmer here to come here from the northeast. You know, he used to tell us all the time how he has this big, huge farm. When he bags one maize, he cost him a lot for security. He used to come here all the time. This is what they are saying, the USDA. So if this is the issue, guys, there's a big, big, big problem. Remember what I said? You can't stop food imports. You can stop car, you can stop private jet, you can stop everything, but you cannot stop food imports. Last one before I leave Olumide, look at this chart here. This is the CNBC. This is yields in the whole world, bond yields in the whole world. What this means is that if you go to America, you can get a bond and can yield you about 4%, UK about 4.9. Remember, where's the money from Nigeria coming from? It's coming from the UK. So now the UK guys can get about 4.9. As long as this yield keeps on going up, Nigeria's going to keep on seeing a downward effect, because why would they come to Nigeria if they can get a higher yield in the UK? But fear not, guys, fear not. If you compare the yield that they are getting, this next slide is going to be, the bond guys will know it better. Olumide then will understand this next chart better. If you compare Nigeria with countries across the world, this is why we are getting huge foreign portfolio investments. If you go to China and you borrow money from China, and you come to Nigeria and you invest in Nigerian bonds, you're making almost 130% return. Same thing with Japan, 124% return. Germany, 117% return. Italy, 178% return. UK, about, is that 98% return? Yeah. So what's going on here is that the bonds in the UK are going to pay you, say, 1, but the bonds in Nigeria are going to pay you about 90. The difference. This is why they are coming to Nigeria. They can borrow locally, come to Nigeria and invest and get this high return so that when they convert that bond back to pounds, they still make money. But this only works, right, if the country has got dollars to pay them back. So Nigeria is giving them very, very high rates to keep this yield up so they can attract people to come. So it's a lot of information. I get it. It's a lot of information I've shared. But again, this is the picture I want just you guys to sort of understand what's happening. It's not as simple as saying, should I hold dollars? Should I hold Naira? Naira has gone up. You see on Twitter, oh, Naira has gone up 12 points. It's immaterial. I've told you guys last week, it's immaterial, the exchange rate. What matters is the trend and what is actually going on. What's the point of having Naira if you can't buy fertilizer? What's the point? If Naira is 1 to 1, you can't buy fertilizer for farming. What's the point? But if dollar is losing value, but you can use dollar and buy fertilizer, then the utility is more than the exchange rate. So we are focusing too much on the exchange rate and not on the utility of the currency. If you have currency and it's giving you 1,000% return, but you can't get that currency to China and import goods and services, what's the point? Olimide, thanks for hanging out there. Guys, Olimide is going to speak. If you want to speak, please request to speak and I'll just add you. But Olimide, we've shared a lot, right? What's on your mind? Why are you picking up? What are you picking up on this? What's on your mind, really, that you want to talk to us about?
Thank you, Kalu. Good evening, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm basically a financial market writer. I cover markets from local perspective, Nigeria to the global spectrum. And it's been an interesting conversation from Kalu. Though I have some disparity in some of his comments, which is normal because the objective of having this discussion is for listeners, to have a very strong option of taking which they think best works for them and using the data. Carl, I think you need to mute because of the feedback. Sorry, it's affecting the quality of the sound. So naturally, from the headline, I'll start from the historicals. So if you look at this month, it has been horrible from retail investors. The market, the US stock market is down $5 trillion this month. You look at the Magnificent Seven, you look at major stocks like Tesla, Google, Meta, they really depreciated so much. And you look at the fact that many Nigerians have exposure in these assets, the argument of holding the dollar and the naira becomes a bit tricky. Now, I understood what Kalu was saying, that it's been the standard. If you look at the inception of the naira to the US dollar, the naira has always lost value. So it's no brainer to say that the dollar usually heads out the long term. But this is the problem for the average Nigerian. The holding capacity of the average Nigerian is thin because disposable income is weak. About half of the population cannot have balanced diets. The median income in Nigeria is 200,000 naira. You just earning above $500 a month puts you around the middle upper class level. So it becomes very tricky on using the global trend to apply what is happening back home. But I would like to go to the market first and just summarize all the things I'm going to say. So from the markets, oil prices has really so fast, and Nigeria is more exposed than many countries. In fact, it's only Philippines that have higher diesel prices. Petrol, we are like the third. And the reasons are simple. We don't have implicit and explicit form of subsidy. So the Nigerian populace is behind the brunt. So you will see diesel are rising 75% this month. Very horrible trajectory. Look at petrol prices. So that has also weakened the purchasing power of the average Nigerian. But from the Naira perspective, I think my outlook has always been still positive, very positive, and except for what the CBN did, which Kalu really highlighted. But before then, we need to look at the historical. So I think what this administration has done successfully is that it's restored integrity in this market because, like most of my friends, I remember when I came home in 2023, 2012, when I spoke about investing in stocks, investing in our capital market, it was really met with old style views. And their cases were valid because at that point, you saw depreciation of the Naira at some point 40%, losing 40% within 7 months. So the fact that the currency has stabilized and for about 2-3 years, money market returns were hovering above 15%, and you look at what you are getting in global markets with the Naira stabilizing, I think it's been fair, and that also brought in inflows, like Kalu rightly said, though we have issues with FDIs, but the bone of contention is that the worst is over. The market has stabilized from a market perspective. The Nigerian stock market is at an all-time high despite recent pullbacks from the 130 trillion peak period. You see confidence around the capital market from Cairo to the US to the UK talking about Dangote refinery bringing optics, the geopolitical. So yeah, the positive. So I wouldn't want the average Nigerian to bet on the Naira, but this is the issue I have with the average Nigerian. So because you understand the weakness of the Naira, you know that putting the Naira just in the bank looks like a dumb move because even if you don't, even if you, like, for example, you don't touch it for a year, you get at best 5%. The smart thing you do now is considering what options you have. The safest money market firm in terms of exposure from Stanbic, for example, last time I checked, they give about 15%. Some firms give as high as 18 to 19%. So people need to understand that right now the opportunity is information. Where are you keeping your idle cash? And the fact that companies are going to list, Dangote has said is going to list this year. Definitely, we're expecting some upsides in that asset class based on the historicals, of how Dangote has moved his IPOs. Then you look at other fundamentals. The election is coming in. The political party looks like, the ruling party looks like they're going to consolidate power. We've seen so many defections among the governorship. So we are not expecting an uproar or destabilization in the market so soon. However, we have short-term concerns. Kalu really highlighted the short-term concerns. First, Nigeria has tepid oil production. Consumption on the micro level is horrible, very horrible. The middle class is disjointed, wealth has diminished, been demonstrated as record not seen, since MAMSA before IBB, So that really is a red flag for this administration. You also need to look at the fact that the recent reform by the CBN, where I think it was over ambitious because we're looking at the fact that FPIs now tend to be taking a cool off Nigerian market despite recent trend that shows uptick in our treasury bills purchases. And that's pretty much because, like Kalu rightly said, if you look at the US 10 yield, it's what we look to gauge market sentiment from the bond market, which is the world's most important market. At some point, it looked like it was going to go 5%. And that's a really trigger sign for recession because the bond market is even more important than the stock market. And the fact that we are not far from the 5% tells you that you should be worried. So, in the short term, it looks like things are not so rosy because we've not maximized the oil earnings, Bonnie Light. I was tracking Bonnie Light for so many. If you read my stories on Nairametrics, I wrote so much on Bonnie Light, and the reason was because from the beginning of the war, I expected that Bonnie Light would easily break over the $100 mark, and indeed, and at some point it looked like it was going to break above the 120 before pulling back. So, and you know that Dangote buys a percentage of Nigerian crude. I understand when people were trying to look at the spread between the crude and refined products, and they've forgotten that he also pays a premium middleman. And Dangote has traders in the UK that helps him hedge all this risk. So I think the margins are not as high as what the market is saying and what people on social media are saying. But the truth of the matter is that Nigerians definitely will bear the brunt. So crude oil prices that almost double the price of what the federal government allocated the federal government budget is not so exciting, because a percentage of that production goes to debt obligation. We are not producing as much as we should. Some of some of the proportion goes to Dangote also. Dangote also has to buy imports. In fact, CBN data showed that Dangote spent almost $4 billion on importation of crude. So that also increased demand for FX, So while we're excited by the removal of subsidy, Nigeria's richest man was more focused on bringing imported crude. So finally, I think my own case is that holding the Naira or holding the dollar. Now, this is how I end the case. Look at the dollar index. Now, the dollar index is what I use to gauge the dollar strength naturally, because it's what you use to weigh against 6 major currencies like the British pound, the euro, the Swedish krona. And if you look at how it has been, the dollar has been on a decline. Even if you add the ongoing war where you see the price of dollar coming up, or the advent of the fact that we're going to have a hawkish Fed after Powell leaves office in May, you're seeing upside. But recently, the dollar has been weak. And Donald Trump, yes, you could argue he wants a weak dollar, but the credibility of the dollar under President Trump has been eroded by his geopolitical standings among his allies, market integrity, different things. So the US is not commanding, does not have that commanding optics like they had, and that's, like I pretty mentioned, the different scenarios around the market. But what it means for you is that the US dollar index and the Nigeria Naira has been disjointed relatively. And the distortion is because at some point the Naira was so depressed that there was no interaction with the foreign market. Because if you look at 2023, for example, when the US dollar index was on a decline, the Naira also was on a decline. If you look at 2024, when the Naira started gaining momentum, the dollar started picking up. So what I'm trying to make you guys understand is that, you could look at the correlation from a single point of view, but if you look at it from a global perspective, the Naira and the dollar don't really have that relationship as well. That's why I tell people that the relationship between Naira and dollar, it's not as simple as ABC. It's not a vanilla relationship, because when you compare with major currencies around the world, you get the picture. So the dollar is strengthening. The Naira still looks like it's not. The Naira now has been relatively stable, though that's lost the 1,003, 3,000 support. It's looking like it's going to stabilize between 1,350 to 1,450 this month, next month. So, sorry, to round everything up, I think from the retail perspective, what they really need to look at is how best would they make their Naira the bulk. Because, Kalu, we can say all the beautiful macros and criticize some of the problems facing it. But to average Nigerian, I think they're more concerned about the high cost of gasoline, which is petrol, the fact that disposable income has been eroded. The government is not really supporting, which I really have a problem with that, because even where I am, I can see what the government is doing for people earning below minimum wage. I can see. So I'm so disappointed in the fact that, the president has done a good job in stabilizing the macros, bringing the market integrity and amplifying marketing. But, this doesn't translate to the average Nigerian. And that often leads to why some people on social media are very angry.
Yeah, just good summary, right? Let me just bring you back to this idea of food. Like today, I saw a report from Nairametrics, crate of egg going for 6,800. 6,800. So I pulled up. There was this ICRG, just not there's this report that was done by these guys that do ICIR, this Institute of Investigative Research. Crate of egg in 2022 was 2,200. Crate of egg in 2023 was 3,000. People are saying on Twitter it's 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. Nairametrics 8,005. So when you have a situation where food price is just consistently going up, inflation they say is coming down, but food prices are going up, and food prices in Nigeria are priced in Naira. That sort of tells people that, listen, instead of holding Naira, I should hold dollars, then change and buy food and just keep it in Naira. Because if you put money in the bank, if you put 2,000 in the bank, would they give you 8,000 Naira? You put the 2,000 in 2022, you won't get 8,000 in
Yeah, but
2026.
yeah, but I want to change that narrative because like what you're trying to say is that they should speculate. So from your own point of view, like you are sophisticated, like you understand how to hedge your risk. You understand. You've been in the market. I don't have a problem with you. The problem is that the average Nigerian is not sophisticated, and the average Nigerian does not have that opportunity. So, for example, I don't buy at black market rates. I earn in FX, I earn in euros, I earn in the US dollar, I earn in Naira. So you will not see me buying the Naira at 1450. It doesn't happen to me because I will definitely, since I'm earning in other currencies, I can hedge my risk. But I will not tell the average Nigerian that is earning in Naira to buy at a premium. You see, the problem is that a lot of people don't understand that the average Nigerian have localized problems with the exchange rate. If you look at some of these fintech apps, for example, they sell to Nigerians at 1.6. So you're telling a Nigerian to pay a markup of 10 to 20% just to hedge against the Naira and just to keep the money in a bank that doesn't give you a return. Even if you keep your money in, for example, Stanbic Dollar Fund, you get 6%.
Yeah,
Now,
but
the markup fee, you are down 14%.
but
I
Olumide,
get your
isn't that the
value.
point? I mean, Olumide, we're not being not to take. There's not sophistication here. I'm saying, Mama BC. Let me go back to the chart and look for the price of rice in 2022, 2023. So Mama BC is selling rice. Mama put in 2022, she bought rice for 47,000. Rice now 50,000. Okay, rice is imported, so the price has come down. Let's pick bread. 700 naira for bread in 2022. Now it's 1,200 in 2023. What's price of bread today? What's price of spaghetti? What's price of noodles? I just shared it now. The point I'm making is that if food prices keep on going up, right, and the income of Nigerians in Naira has stayed flat. You remember inflation is 15%, which means Naira is falling by 15, slower than last year. So that's a positive, right? But the Naira in your hand is falling. It's not a sophisticated argument. It's falling. And the price of food is going up. Not even PMS. PMS is for elites. Food that everyone is going to eat is going up. Volume is going up. So that's the point for me, that if food price is expensive and has not come down, and the only ones that have come down is because of imports, there's a big problem. I'm adding you. Massive problem there, that if we can only reduce the price of food by importing it, that's a big problem.
Yes,
That's
I
what I'm
totally,
saying.
no, I totally agree. The summation of what you said, I'm just trying to say that yes, these are problems that has been prevalent in our system for a while. But for discussion's sake, my own point is like we know this is a problem. Like that's why I for one, I feel like one of the Achilles of this administration is agriculture. Whether the president likes it or not, agriculture under him has been horrible. That has been very terrible. I can't even, the fact that I even covered the space, I can't even pronounce the full name of the Minister for Agriculture. Tells you a lot of how quiet he has been, whether you like it or not. From a political perspective, from a policy perspective, from farmers' perspective, farmers are not happy. I get it, but what I'm saying for the average Nigerian is that we can still you could still hedge your risk, and hedging your risk is like we're in a place where now things are not going to get rosy, and I don't want to preach bad news continually. I want to bring out solutions. What I think the average Nigerian should focus on. So the average Nigerian should focus on is how do you hedge your risk? Like Kalu said, if you look at next inflation data, I'll be so disappointed if he says it has gone down, because the price of petrol, food has skyrocketed. It's going to get worse, to be honest with you. Even Americans are trying to secure fertilizers continually from Dangote because there's disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. And if you understand that fertilizers are gotten from hydrocarbons are the major source, then you should be worried. So I think in the near time, I think we're going to experience serious pain. And the president doesn't have, I don't think there's anything about food security like we have in America. So, but the average Nigerian, I think what we need to focus on is how do you reduce your exposure to the risk of the Naira? I don't think changing your Naira to dollar, for me, my personal view, is the solution. I've given options, like, for example, you're in Nigeria, how much is the average Nigerian earning? If you say a Nigerian is earning 200 or 300,000 to change the dollar, $100, what is the opportunity cost risk involved? The alpha, you look at all these things, to me, it's really negligible. So I'll say, average Nigeria, you're earning 200,000 naira, or you're earning less, or you're earning less than a million naira, then you should look at portfolio allocation. First, you know that food is going up. I don't see the bag of rice hitting 150,000 naira by December. That would be very crazy. But what you should do is that you need now to make painful choices. If you're thinking of spending extra, you need to cut in on things that are not necessary. Then you also have to have these three form of allocation: safety, medium, high risk. Now, the safety, where a lot of Nigerians are, like this month, for example, if you keep in 100,000, if you keep in 1 million naira in your bank in a safe instrument where treasury or things like that, you have edge against the dollar, even if the naira breaks to 1.5. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that if the naira even devalues to 1.5 by the end of the year, and you keep a certain percentage of your assets because you don't have strong liquidity, you go to blow that risk rather than just keeping your money or changing to the dollar. Because if you're changing to the dollar, like the Aboki is going to take a premium from you.
Yeah, but
You're not changing
let me
at this
just
risk.
to be clear, we're not asking anyone to change dollars to naira. The point we're making is that the food price is priced in naira. Unless you are going to buy in bulk, you are going to be caught up. The US is already warning Nigerians that by 2026, 2027, there's going to be higher food prices. And it's saying they're going to be higher food prices because the cost of planting food in Nigeria is going to go up. And that's what's happening. This is before the war, Lumide. So the point is that as a Nigerian housewife, you are in a Ebonyi state, the cost of your food is going to go up in 2027. This is before the war in Iran. So the point is, what do you then do? What are you going to do? You either buy in bulk or you change your currency. There's no other way around it. And I get what you're saying, that yes, the housewife in Ebonyi is too poor to simply hold currency that is not the naira. That is true, because Nigerians have no consumption, Nigerians have no savings. Only about 5% of Nigerians have more than 500,000 naira in their bank account. You know that data start to limit. Yes. But what then? We're going to be exposed. It's coming. It's coming. Food prices are going to go up because the inputs are going to go up. We haven't fixed power. And to convert cassava to gari, you need power supply to convert cassava to gari. There's no power. So if we buy power more expensive, the price of gari is going to go up. I saw imported gari in Abuja from India and Vietnam. Gari imported. Why is gari being imported? Because it's cheaper to make gari outside Nigeria. This is the point I'm making. So that's the reality. We can debate.
Another thing again is that we have a supply chain problem. This thing you
True.
mentioned. This thing you mentioned really touched me, because for me, like example, when I go to African restaurants in many European stores, I see Ghanaian Gary, I see Togolese Gary, and Nigerians, we are more in numbers relatively, particularly if you look at in the UK or in the US than many of these French-speaking African countries. And we don't see, the only thing I've seen made in Nigeria is Malta Guinness, and it's the bottled one. That's the only made in Nigeria thing I've seen. Even as banana, Ghana, banana, in France, this is a a French colony, so sorry, an English speaking country. So it's not because we can't do. I think we have a supply chain problem. We also the agriculture opportunity is underutilized because that alone you mentioned. Just imagine we are importing Gary. Vietnam, it's an embarrassment. And that's why I have a problem with this administration in terms of the fact that agriculture. When this president came in, one of the things I was even looking at because his nickname, if you look at some of his critics and the opposition, they call him Agbadu. So I was even looking at the fact that we're going to have a strong agricultural ecosystem because I made some bets not because of if you look at my bets on Okuma and Presco was not really because yes they had good fundamentals like that. Yeah, they had good, but naturally because I was envisaging that there was going to be an agricultural revolution. And that also will boost all these subjects like anywhere. And that's why I'm disappointed in the way the president has taken the CBN, like the way I've taken the agriculture. I think many guys in the middle class and lower class, because the most important thing for the average Nigerian is food. More than half of their income is spent on food. And if you look at Kalu, we don't live good lives we don't eat well because if the way we spend money on food, if you look at our life expectancy rate, Niger has a better life expectancy rate than us.
Okay, now we've come to the same arena. So if we both agree that the costs are going to go up, especially food, I know how we know. How do we know a poor country and a rich country? What's the only metric that works to know if a country is poor and a country is rich? Is to look at how much the population spends on food. Good. So if food price is going to go up, and we know this, right? Why have we not, like you said, done this Agbado thing where we're going to take the youth, send them to the farms so that we have unemployment taken care of and we have food taken care of? Because the only person that can reduce food price today for that housewife in Ebonyi today, only as we speak, is the government. If the government says the Naira is going to get stronger, right, that means that her food imports get cheaper. If the government says they're going to increase wages, that means her partner can afford more food. If the government says they're going to reduce her taxes, that means she can import more food. But you and I go ahead.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, Kalu, like you rightly said, like I said, I blame the government, but agriculture, that's one of the things we need reforms in
state. So when we say government, state and local, not state and local.
I understand you. But one of the excuses this constitution gives, especially the guys in the ruling party have, which is genuine, is that states have a big role to play in agriculture. But for a president to be this politically strong that could bring in so many people to his party, I feel like he should be able to bring
more people. Gotcha.
So for me, I'm tired of us talking about the problem. I feel that for us to solve these things, first of all, like we have to cut this agricultural thing to 6 geopolitical zones. And the reason is because not far-fetched, is because we are getting to a point that we don't know how serious, how troubling it is. Because let me into if you look at the food basket of the country, the middle belt, you see banditry has really damaged. And if you look at the map, banditry looks like it's coming downwards. There were places that you never heard cases of banditry, right? Now it's coming. And also the fact that now we are taking the cheaper option, which I don't have a problem with, importing food. We are also weakening the upside of farmers. Imagine farmers are complaining. They're not really happy about that. And every farmer is not happy with this administration, to be honest with you, because yes, you can argue food is cheaper relatively, but the cost and the opportunities to pay labor, to get inputs, little or no extension officers to give them technology on maximizing their production capacity. These are problems that I think the administration need to face. So I think if the president is going to focus on the second term, because I don't see him losing naturally, but he's going to focus on the second term. There are two things I'll tell you that history will not forget him: electricity and agriculture. He has to fix those two, because this crisis in Iran, God help us, if it goes for another month, for example, and oil prices stay, petrol prices stays, we might experience things that, God forbid, we never because people can't. Let me give you an hint. Go on. You see, apart from, because I write a lot, so I don't just look at Twitter. I try to get the vibes on the street. What is really happening to the average Nigerian. Kalu, things are bad. And you know what AI is doing now? Even AI has damaged jobs abroad. So immigrants that are sending money, like it's not like before again. So the truth of the matter is that when the populace is unhappy, there are no jobs, disposable income is weak, and people are seeing other people making money on social media, people living life, particularly among the elites, then it becomes a problem.
Okay, we're going to get to folks to hop in and speak, but let me give you a last data point for those listening. Let me give you a data point Lumida has highlighted between inflation, food, and insecurity. If you look at all the regions in Nigeria, there are 6 regions in Nigeria. 6. The region that has the lowest inflation is the region that has the lowest insecurity and has the lowest food inflation. Let me say it again. The lower your food inflation is, the lower your inflation is, the lower your insecurity is. Now, is it causation, correlation? I don't want to go there. But the regions that have got the highest inflation in Nigeria are in the north. The northeast, north central, northwest. They have the highest inflation, they have the highest food inflation, and then they have the highest insecurity. The region with the lowest inflation in Nigeria is the southeast region, lowest headline inflation, lowest food inflation. You see what's going on? The food basket of Nigeria has insecurity. Hence, food prices have gone up in that region, then inflation has gone up in that region. But the states that are the not food basket, that are import-driven states, have got lower inflation, lower food inflation, and lower insecurity. So inflation in Nigeria is now tagging insecurity, not just monetary. The state that is called itself the food basket of Nigeria has high inflation, high food inflation, and high insecurity. Normally, policymakers should look at this thing I just said now and say, okay, so to address inflation, we have to address insecurity, which would then bring down food inflation. CBN is doing its work. I'm not faulting CBN, but if you take monetary policy rates to zero, there will still be inflation in Nigeria. So if you don't print any Naira, you don't spend any Naira, you will not remove inflation in Nigeria because it is driven by the lack of food. In the food baskets, where Nigeria gets its tubers and its grains from, are under insecurity. That has driven inflation, which has driven food inflation. That's a crazy stat I've given to you. Crazy stat. Google it, and I'll share it on Twitter before this space is up. This whole chat I've shared to you. Oxley, please go ahead. Thanks for waiting. Let's still hear what Oxley and Zaki have to say, and maybe we'll come back. Oxley Tech, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Kalu. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can. Please, sir. Go ahead.
All right. So I just wanted us to take this discussion a little bit from another perspective. I just wanted to speak a little more on inflation. Now, I think that the government or the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics are rigging this inflation, because it doesn't appear as though that they are reflecting what is on the ground, what is happening on the ground. And here is my reason. Nigerians are complaining of high food costs, high, grocery. People that go to grocery, they are experiencing, things are getting worse. But it appears that the government and the MBS are just hell-bent on looking good. That's all they're interested in. This is my view. They're interested in looking good. So they just want to keep driving inflation figures downwards. It doesn't matter whether it is. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Somebody. All right. So it doesn't matter whether the inflation driving downwards is reflecting is correlating with what is on the ground. Now, this is my first argument. The second part is I have sat down again to analyze the policy of opening the borders for food to flow. I remember when that happened sometime last year, early last year or so, we were all like, oh, just open the border, let the food come in so that it will drive down the distance. Now I'm thinking it looks like we have gotten to the saturation point of that policy, because that policy doesn't seem to be working anymore. It doesn't. It looks like, yes, it worked in the early days and weeks, but as of today, if the border is still open and food is still coming in, destroying the local producers and the local farmers' produce, in terms of pricing. So why are we still having high food costs? I'm trying to correlate that. I'm like, what is actually going on here? Have we sat down to analyze or to look at the impact of that policy, whether there has been the benefit has been there, or maybe we've gotten to the peak.
I think Oxley have the insecurity has not gone down. I mean, if you look at what we shared in the slides, when there's insecurity, farmers can't go to the farm. So if there's no farming, then you have to import food. It's just 1 plus 1. Yeah.
I agree with the importation, but now I'm now saying, why is inflation still happening, particularly in the food side, despite the open borders?
Because we can't really import everything. We've spent. Let me give you the figures. 2022, we're importing 2.86 trillion. 2025, we were importing 7.65 trillion in Naira. So we've gone from about 2.8 to 7.6 trillion in importing food in just how many years? 4 years. So how much can we go? Population has not stopped. We're still having babies. We're still about 2.9% population growth in Nigeria. But there's no food. The food output is falling. There's still insecurity in the food. I don't want to call it the food basket states. So what's we have to import. Nobody likes import, but I'm saying we have to import, otherwise inflation gets to 30%.
I agree. So what I'm saying is, what has been the impact of that importation on the food prices on the ground?
It has reduced the food price. The food prices have come down quite a bit in Nigeria, because without the imports, it would have been 100 times worse. Rice price came down. Because you can look, it's not where it should be. Yeah, so it has come down, and that is from import. So it's like, if we don't import, that's when you see the effect. Right now, because we're importing, we're not seeing the worst effects. I can get bread with 2,000 naira if there's no import. I can get bread because we're importing the wheat flour. If you remember, it was a long time ago, a US ship came with wheat. It was a big event. A ship came with wheat from the US at the port. The US ambassador went there and all that. They were all there. Remember, there was a time a ship docked here. If you Google it.
So Kalu, my question here now is, why are things even getting harder?
Because we have to.
Are you saying that the inflation or the people that are crying is not because of food?
No.
Of other things.
What I'm saying is that your Naira is weakening. So if you imported food in 2024, you are going to start at a higher price today, because the supply has still not met demand. You can't import your way out of a food crisis. That's what I'm saying as well. The point is, you've got to have organic food output to feed Nigerians. Import is a stopgap. You can't use Band-Aid for cancer. You get what I'm saying? So food imports have to come in the interim to stopgap the fall in output. Like the tweet I just shared with you, the highest states that have high inflation are the food-growing states. There is higher food inflation in Benue than in Abia. That's what I'm sharing with you. Benue has the yams, the rice, the cassava. Abia is more or less they don't have the agriculture. Yeah, but Abia has a lower inflation and lower food inflation than Benue. The southeast has a lower inflation than the north central. The north central grows the food in Nigeria. The southeast does not grow the food crops in Nigeria. They grow cassava, but that's Gary, but it's grown more in the central. But the Southeast has a lower inflation than the North Central. Why? Because North Central has the highest insecurity. If you go all the way from Kwara, Kogi, Benue, you see that issue there. And that's what's going on, sir. It's not just inflation has left CBN, it's now with the Nigerian army. If the Nigerian army cannot bring insecurity, we're not going to have cheaper food in Nigeria. That's where I'm going to.
So, Carlo, the question I will leave you with is: do you sincerely, maybe you and Olumide, do you sincerely believe that the inflation in Nigeria is, in reality, is 15%?
I don't think it's 15%, but I think it's falling because food prices have come down. So I would say the trend from the MBS is correct. If you bring in food, inflation price will go down because food is about 40% of your consumer price index. So if there's more food coming in, food price will go down. So that trend is true. If it's 15 or 14, I don't think Nigerians care what the number is. Now, what Nigerians care is that when they go to the market, they don't want to buy egg for 6,500. That's what Nigerians don't want to do. So how do you correlate 15% to 6,800? I have not seen any non-imported food go down in Nigeria. Eggs are not imported.
Yes. So, Carlo,
Oxlade, I'm not the government. You've asked a question in many ways. But I've answered you. So I'm not sure what answer you want to get.
So where I will leave it is less than 2 years ago, inflation was 34%. It went down by half, by more than half. Why are Nigerians still complaining?
Yeah, because the food output that we're importing
something came down by half, and there are still noise everywhere.
There are many things that happen. Number one, we changed the way we calculate inflation. So in the past, we calculated 51% of inflation was driven by food. 51% of the CPI was food methodology, food calculation. We changed the methodology to say we're only going to count 40% in the consumer price index. So first of all, the fall in food you've seen, the fall in inflation, is backed up by a methodology change, number one, not just a full output change. So if inflation went down from 38 to 15, in that fall is a change of methodology, not just food imports as well. Keep that in mind. But the point I'm making is that because you import, overall food price is going to come down. But how much? If we don't see mama put price going down, then we really can't say inflation is going down. We have to see it in our day-to-day lives. I'm agreeing with you, but you're not saying anything new. People don't care if inflation rate is 38 or 15. What people care is that when they go and buy food, the price of that food has got to come down. Inflation falling does not mean the price of food has come down. It simply means that the rise in the food price has reduced. If you go and buy rice today, inflation going down does not mean the cost of rice will come down. No, it means that the cost of the increase in price of rice has gone down. That's what it means. Okay, so that's how I'll put it that way. I don't know if we can leave it like that. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Let's get Zaki and I get Dr. Obiere. Zaki, please go ahead real quick before I get Dr. Obi to speak. Zaki, what's up? Zaki is not there. Dr. Obiere, how are you doing, sir?
Sorry, I'm here. Zaki is here.
Oh, Zaki, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed the engagement. I'll introduce myself as a farmer in Taraba currently, and I understand the numbers and the statements you have given, but I can tell you that I am feeling the impact as it is. What I mean by that is, I like the last statement that you said, that the fact that inflation is a little bit more doesn't necessarily reflect on the purchasing power of commodity. I am a farmer and I'm into aggregation. I can tell you that at every week I see the pattern at which commodity rise and fall, and it appears sometimes it aligns with the inflation figures based on that's in other words contradicting what you just said, Mr. Kalu, and sometimes it's disaligned. So I am left in dark. Sometimes you wouldn't necessarily get it because I am a keen follower of yourself and Olumide and other economists as well. And then I find out that with what I'm seeing on ground, there's disparity. But thankfully for such a medium where you can listen and share idea. So I don't know if there's any school of thought or any law that covers where it doesn't necessarily align with the inflation.
Can you be more specific?
Okay. I understand. Someone said the last speaker said prices are rising. No, prices are not rising, sir. And then Mr. Kalu, you initially said prices will eventually rise. I can tell you that no, they will not rise. For the foreseeable future, prices will not likely rise. Maybe it will meet the next rainy season. And once the next rainy season comes, the new farming season kicks in, and then the new harvest begins, the prices will be kept the same, in the same bracket of prevailing prices. So I don't necessarily see prices rising. I would not necessarily agree because we have commodity on ground. The market wants it, but yet nobody is taking it.
Let me pause you. So you have an echo. You have an echo. I'm going to mute you. Okay. So this is one thing that we always talk about in Nigeria, right, Saki? If you go to, I've been to Sokoto, there were onions everywhere, right? I went to Benue, there were yams everywhere. If you go to my village, there's cassava everywhere. The problem is not the harvest. The problem is to get that yam, onion, and cassava from the village to the cities of Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja. What you're describing is that you have a bountiful harvest in that where you are, but you need diesel on a truck to get that from where it is to the market. You need diesel to process that cassava or that yam or that whatever you have where you are, so it doesn't rot after the dry season, after the harvest season. If you go on any express road in Nigeria, what do you see? You see market women drying produce on the highway because they have no dryers, they have no post-harvest processing of harvest. That's why we have corn season. After corn season, we don't see any corn till next corn season. Go to Walmart, there's okra 24 hours. Go to Walmart, there's bananas, apples 24/7, but not in Africa where we grow them. So the issue is not the harvest in your own location, but the fact that we cannot process that harvest, store it, cold chain it, and logistically distribute it at efficiency across the states of Nigeria. We have no railways going east to west in Nigeria, none. So if you have a lot of yams in Benue, what are you going to do with the yams in Benue if diesel is nearly how much per liter? How do you do it, Zaki? That's the problem. There's yam in Benue, isn't there? There's onion in Jigawa. But go to mile 12. What is the price of onion in mile 12 in Lagos? Very expensive. The issue is not the harvest per se, Zaki, but the ability to distribute, store, keep it for 6 months after harvest without rotting. How much food do we lose by food losses, Zaki? Do you want to come back on that, Zaki?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I really is the cost of transportation from point A to B, which I agree, but it's not solely on that, sir. There are other commodities in the event, in the case of, let's say, maize or soya beans, where you can get in Taraba or all across the northern region. But yet, if you went to Kaduna, if you went to Taraba, if you went to Gombe, you would see that there is, of course, there's been that everything is, the old format is, or the current format is anything close to the southwest or the southeast is usually cheaper. That is why it is easier to to transport maize, the price of maize in, let's say, Suleja will be typically more expensive than that you find in Kalu, because you are heading already to the southwest or the southeast. That being said, I don't think, sir, it is solely, that factor is solely determining by the price of the cost of transportation.
No, I don't think it's the cost of transportation. I think like the USDA is saying that the cost of inputs to farmers is stopping them from farming. And I've shared with you if you look at the data I shared with you was the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics that says that when you start to leave the south and start to go to the north, the inflation starts to go up, food inflation starts to go up, insecurity starts to go up. It was a reverse before in Nigeria. When I was growing up at school in the north, food was cheaper in the north than the south because the north produces the food. The tubers and the grains that Nigeria eats is from the north. Lagos did Lekki rice, is it Lake rice? Where do I getting rice from? Kebbi, and the rice was being sent to Lagos. Do you know, sir, it is cheaper now to go to India, pay freight, pay insurance, pay shipping, send rice from India to the port of Lagos than to take rice from Kebbi to Lagos? That's a data point for us. It's not the cost of running business inside Nigeria, not in Lagos. The interior of Nigeria is very expensive. Logistics. What food are you talking about? You don't have to store. How would you have a cold chain without cheap power? What food do you have today on earth that you won't store? So I dare you, Mr. Zakin, I mean in a nice way, write the cost of the food today at harvest. Come back in 6 months' time when the harvest is gone. Let's compare the cost of food today. But come to the US, the grain is the grain. There's no issue with harvest time, whatever time. They have silos on every farm. They have trains. They have a cold chain. So you can't say that's what Lagos is trying to build today in Lagos. They're trying to build an integrated cold chain and storage facility in Lagos. So they're going to buy food in bulk and keep it in that location, and then release it in bits to the market. So there's no inflation in Lagos. That's what they're trying to do. So the issue is not the harvest price. The issue is again, logistics, roads, rails, power to store and to do post-production. That's the issue. If you go to my village, there's vegetables and gari everywhere. But leave my village to Aba, is expensive. And everyone on this space listening knows that if you go to your village, whatever is the main crop, go to Benue today, you see mangoes, kerosene mangoes, they are free. It's on the road, free. Go to Kano, you see tomatoes rotting on the road, free. You see onions, free. Okay, come to Lagos, you don't see onions, you don't see tomatoes, you don't see them for free. But you can see jeans, you can see sneakers in Lagos, right? Because that's where it's brought into. So, Zaki, I do get the point, but again, the issue in Nigeria is the logistics. That's what the USDA is saying, that the high input cost is going to stop farmers from planting. That's what they are saying. I didn't say so, the USDA. Let's get Doctor. Doctor, go ahead, Dr. Berry. Thanks for being here.
Okay, Kalu, thank you so much.
How are you doing, sir?
I appreciate it. Very fine, bro. Very fine. I sometimes I wonder the Nigeria where people are living in, that they said prices are not going up. Kalu, I'm massively into agriculture, not just peasant agriculture, with over 29 agro parks across. In fact, we have an agro park now in Kanu, in Kaduna, where we are doing onions. We have agro park in Suleja. We have even rice processing mill in Kubwa and in Abakaleke. I'll give you an example. We produce ginger even in the southeast. Carlo, two months ago, we were selling 50 kg bag of ginger for 250,000 naira in Onitsha. Ginger produced in Umuobomi, that local government area. Today, the same bag of ginger is selling for 390,000 naira with a bag. And somebody is saying that the market price is not going up. We are not importing it from Kano. We are not bringing it from Sokoto. We're not bringing it from Kaduna. These are ginger produced at the backside. If you go to Kaduna now, the same ginger that was selling for 230,000 naira for 50 kg bag is selling for 390,000 with a bag. That is, you're going to the farm to go and pick it from the farm and carry it. You're not even, when it gets to the market, the prices change. So I don't know why people are saying that the price is not going up. And I'll give you another example. If you check the goods in Nigeria, the food commodities that are coming down, they are the ones that are drugs that are imported into Nigeria. Most farmers are not going to go back to farm this year because they've been crippled. I'll give you an example. In Taraba, there's a massive place in Taraba where they produce massive maize. As I'm talking to you now, there is no road to that place. In fact, there is even no bridge. You have to, first of all, bring your truck, keep your truck on one side. They use canoe to pack the bag of maize from the place across the river. Then you truck it into your truck. Of course, to carry about 300 to 600 bags, you have to pay over 3 million naira to move it from that Taraba all the way to about where you have the processing mill, where you will convert it to animal feed. And do you know those farmers are crying? Those farmers today now they are even at 20,000 naira per 50 90 kg bag. They are looking for who will buy it because most people, by the time you calculate the cost of moving it from the farm across the river and then loading it, you will discover that you may even land it to about at a cost of almost about 480, 60,000 naira per ton. Whereas the maize they are importing from China, from Thailand, is landing here at about 210,000 naira per ton. 300,000 naira per ton.
That's the point I'm making.
The farmer was already wiped out because by the time you look at the input cost of his production, if he says at that price that he's being forced to sell because we are flooding Nigeria with over $10 billion worth of grain import because those guys in APC want to seem good while destroying the local economy. The same thing is happening with rice. Most of our rice farmers from KB to other places, because see, Kalu is what you put in that you get out. In Egypt has 95% desert. Egypt is only serviced by the Nile. But the output of a hectare of Egyptian farm, a rice farm, using the Geri species, averages about 6 to 8 tons per hectare. But the local farmer in KB State, because he has no access to the hybrid Geri species, he has no access to water resources that can help him do it. He has no access to storage. He has no access to mechanized agriculture that can cheapen his productivity. He will discover that his yield may actually end up being about 2 tons per hectare. After all the energy and suffering and everything and investment, somebody is importing rice produced in Thailand, produced in India, at an average of about 7 tons per hectare. And they give the contrast to their cronies who will land the same bag of rice here that somebody is struggling to produce at 36,000 naira per 50 kg. They are landing it here at 30,000 naira. So how does the man in KB compete? So, you know, when I sometimes ask are we actually, okay, Carlo, when you look at the cost of, you know, we talked about the baskets on the consumer price index. Everybody knows that the basic physiological need of man is shelter, is food, is clothing. How many of you live in Nigeria? In Lagos State today, rent has actually gone over 100% over the last 1 year. Ask anybody who lives in Lagos. In Aja, where they used to have 2-bedroom flat we used to go for 1.5 million. Today with 3 million, no landlord is looking at you. And what is even the purchasing power of the average Nigerian? And you know the funny thing is, Nigeria is actually a place that ticks the right boxes to become a food basket for Africa.
Doc, let me ask.
The problem we have, like Randy pointed out, we are not doing what we are supposed to do. We do not have the government in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in other places. You see governments with clear-cut plans. In the First Republic, we had a produce board. We had a clear-cut plan across the whole value chain of agriculture by the Western government, by the Eastern government. That was why we had the Gallop pyramid, the cotton and everything, because there was a scientific plan to integrate the government working with the communities to ensure that all the value chain are covered. There are no losses. Today, such things do not exist because most of those who purport to lead us and govern us across the 3 tiers of government are busy playing politics, are busy doing propaganda, are busy not doing what they're supposed to do to make life easy, to make the farmers. Do you know that in Netherlands, 200,000 farmers are generating over $125 billion every year? In Nigeria, 17 million farmers, we can barely feed ourselves because some of them are just wiped out every year in, year out. Because we have refused to do what we're supposed to do. I love your space because it's very, very insightful. And I would want each and every one of us. But it's when we come to this kind of space, we should remove our biases and put our thinking cap and ask the right questions. What do we do to make Nigeria a place that used to be in the First Republic when we used to have massive Ghanaian pyramid, not like the criminal rights pyramid they used to put at that time? Thank you.
Doc, don't go too fast, right? Doc, can you tie this into us for the exchange rates vis-a-vis what the CBN is doing with the oil companies and what the Naira is doing? Tie this in for us. If we've got these high food prices, tie this in for us.
Let me tie it in, Kalu, today, we are importing, go and fact check this. As at the last record from the CBN, we are importing over $10 billion worth of grains, maize, rice, wheat, things that we can easily produce here competitively. Carlo, as at the last count, Nigeria imports annually over 600 billion naira worth of palm oil. It's a country that used to contribute 45% of the global palm oil supply chain. Carlo, today, if Nigeria decides this year, mostly the governors and local government chairmen in the palm belt of the southwest, southeast, south and middle belt, decide today that they want to cultivate. Do you know that Indonesia, that has half of Nigeria arable landmass, Indonesia has a bigger landmass than Nigeria. But in terms of arable landmass, cultivable landmass, Indonesia cultivable land is half of Nigeria. Yet Indonesia has over 15.8 million hectares of palm plantation. If Nigeria should today, based on the demographics we have, under the missions community, there's private arrangement that we have, decide today to develop 15 million hectares of palm plantations across this belt. Carl, in the next 7 to 10 years, we'll be generating nothing less than $100 billion annually into this economy from the palm value chain. In crops, Carl, we will generate nothing less than $100 billion every year, starting from next year.
I agree.
But we need to tie up. Today, Nigeria needs mechanized tractors and bullets of over up to 1 million in Nigeria. We don't even have 24,000 tractors. Do you know that to import tractors in Nigeria, you will have to, like last January, we imported over 20 tractors into Nigeria. Carl, we saw hell. On paper, customs will tell you the HSC code says 5%. Carl, we paid average of 52%. Because they will tell you once it's a 40-foot container, there's the minimum they must collect, they have a target. Every entreaties for them to look at their code, and they refuse to look at the code.
What?
But in a same country where we know that we need mechanized equipment, we need pressing plants, we need storage plants, we need over 25,000 refrigerated trucks to move things on the other. In the same country where things work, all you did was just for the president to put an executive order. Anything that's coming to Nigeria, whether you're buying it to sell or to resell, whether it is tractor, zero tariff, zero VAT. You don't even need to apply to Federal Ministry of Finance or Agric to have IDEC exemptions. Once they scan the container, you want to have this tractor, what you have is bulldozer, what you have is processing plant, what you have is silos, what you have is storage plant, what you have are articulated honest frogs to make life easy for Nigerians. So, zero tariff.
So, Doc,
and any custom officer who make the mistake of creating lacuna will be sacked immediately.
So, Doc, you're saying
and if we do this thing,
Doc, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
You will see a lot of diasporas. A lot of diasporas will start moving in this equipment into Nigeria under vendor financing, and it's part of the foreign direct investment we're talking about. But as long as we have some of these criminal laws and criminal extortion points created along the paths, most people will stay away from Nigeria. And when there are no inflows of forex and direct investments into Nigeria, it will impact on the stability of our currency. What they're practically doing today is trying to play policy game with the Naira. Because I've never seen a country where inflation rate is claimed to be 15%, MPI 27%. Go and fact check it anywhere. And they show you the level of manipulation going on to ensure that FS level remains at a level that will continue to make it attractive for the FDIs, foreign portfolio investors.
True. We have the FPI. Doc, let me just be very clear. Just two questions. So you are saying that you imported tractors because they were in a 40-foot container. they refused to. They cleared the container, but not what was inside the container.
Kalu, let me shock you. The tractors we have purchased, these are tractors. If you go online and put the chassis number, it will show you when it was manufactured. It will even show you the price. Even the company listed the price on their website.
Yeah.
But these guys on their own revalue the tractor to be 3 times the value of the tractor.
Oh wow.
And upon that, they played a tariff of 20% on it.
But there's
what was the reason?
There's no tariff on agric.
Carl, there is not. In fact, Carl, let me tell you. They said it is 5% because you did not apply. Carl, let me tell you the funny thing. You know, when I wanted to apply for IDEC, they told me you have to go to Federal Ministry of Agriculture. You apply. Do you know you know what they told me at Federal Ministry of Agriculture? They said I have to pay for flight tickets for 4 of their people to go to Ibere and Ohafia to go and inspect the farm and certify that there's a farm that exists. Carl, I asked them one simple question. Assuming my farm is in Sambisa Forest, we didn't want me to buy flight ticket for them to go. They started laughing. I know where they were going to. It wasn't about the flight. It was about extortion. Then, Carlo, after that, you've gotten the approval from Federal Ministry of Agri. You will now go to Federal Ministry of Finance. Carlo, this process takes almost about 6 months. Tell me how a serious country we put in place such, and next thing they'll tell you, and if you, they are putting it because they want to separate those who are bringing the tractors to resell and those who are bringing tractors from. Carl, I want to ask you one question. Does anybody import tractor to use it to go and go to party, or to use it to as a wedding vehicle, or to drive it instead of Ikoyi, to their opposite? Tractors are meant for agri. And it's simple law of demand and supply. Okay. If we have 1 million tractors imported into Nigeria, and there are only 10 people that can buy it, what do you think will happen? The price will crash. Okay. This country is a very funny country. And I was privileged to speak to the top echelon at Customs and SI department at the topmost level. I was privileged to speak with them for 2 days. Especially, I told them, they themselves won't realize it. They know what I'm saying is the truth. I said, why should we have to create all these criminal bottlenecks to enable civil servants? Always, as Mr. President, the first thing I will do is to sign an executive order. Whether the tractor is being imported from Malaysia or from Indonesia, as long as it meets the standard Organization of Nigerian quality specifications, 0 tariff, 0 VAT. Carlo, there are 4 factors of production: land, human capital, funding, and equipment. Nigeria does not produce pain. We do not manufacture nothing. There used to be a time we used to have assembly plant. Somebody was asking me, innocent. I said, if you look at the whole assembly plants we have in Nigeria, vehicle assembly plants, innocent, and did not, even if you convert them to produce trucks, the highest they can produce in a year is 40,000. But Carlo, Nigeria is about 700,000 trucks to be able to cover the logistics gap in Nigeria. So the truth is that we know what to do, but we have policymakers and those in government who are only the only thought that comes to their mind when they are making laws. How do we kill Nigerians? How do we extort from them? How do we steal from them? They will never make any law that will make life easy for Nigerians to catalyze productivity. That is where the problem is.
Doc, I think we have to bring you back and just ask you about your journey. So we just what you're saying is just crazy, really, that you have to pay for container when the president has said it's 0 duty free and all that kind of stuff to encourage agriculture. But you're saying you were paying. We'll have to bring you back, sir, just so we capture these comments and we debate it. So I thank you. I mean, I know you're doing a lot in agriculture. Again, just so we catch base again with you where you are on that agricultural journey. And I think lots of people would learn from what you're doing and the money you are making, so we can encourage more people to go into that sector and that field. Thanks, Doc. I appreciate you.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
I've got Cyrus. then Henry. Then we'll go back to Emeka. Cyrus, hi. Cyrus, thanks for hanging out here. What's going on, Cyrus? Cyrus, this way with up your alley. This way up your alley, right? We're talking the CBN.
Well, when it comes to agriculture, I found it quite interesting what the last speaker just said about machinery, because like you also said, I want to believe that there is 0 VAT, right? And I've been that for a long time. So interestingly, the custom is actually violating its own rule.
Yeah.
Putting.
But you hear what he said, right? They are charging him on the container. That's their excuse. That is the container But they don't,
This container.
yeah, they're not looking at what's inside the container. Then they are charging him.
Kalu, you know what they told me? I was so shocked.
It's interesting the way go on, sir.
Go on, Doc.
Kalu, you know what the guys told me? The guys shockingly, they told me that if I like, I can escalate it to, but my container will remain there for months and there will be demolish. I must pay demolish. They said even if it is urine that I poured into that container, as long as it's a 40-foot container, that the minimum I will pay is 17 million. They were very emphatic. They even showed me people that paid 24 million. Kalu is shocking the kind of thing that happened. The level of lawlessness and impunity. And they will keep it. You know that it was in the case of arguing. I was arguing with them. The container everything was sorted out January 2. Kalu, do you know when I finally took out the container? February 13th, almost a month after. Because I was arguing with them, writing petitions. Kalu, nothing moved. I had to swallow my pride, swallow my shame, swallow the pain, and paid too much for something I couldn't have even paid money because of the wickedness of the system.
Wow.
And they will show you people that paid it.
I mean, wow, we have
it does not make sense.
Yeah, I mean, we have to come back, Doc. Doc, we have to come back.
I wasn't talking to the lower level people in economy. I was talking to DIGs. I was talking to the highest level. If I was talking to the guys in Apapa, or anybody, I was talking to those, they would tell me they have targets. That is the madness. They say they have targets. It's the same thing with all the MDAs. They give them criminal targets. Just extort from Nigerians.
Target. So they extort you, food prices go up, then they made their targets. Cyrus, go ahead.
Yeah, I find it quite interesting. And again, it's just that we have very misguided policies when it comes to trade. And what the objective for trade is. The objective for your trade policy is to increase employment and volume of goods and services within your country. If that is not achieved, it's not to generate revenue. And the last speaker was quite right about the mindset and the motivation we use towards policy, even the language we use to communicate policy. In our countries, like what kind of how much revenue are we going to get? As though that is the metric to measure every successful policy. That does not make sense. People have to be engaged in the economy for there to be a robust working economy. If people are not engaged, people are not working. If people are not adding value to adding productivity to the economy will not grow. So you can have a very fat bureaucracy, a very fat, large government, and the people are getting leaner every day. And that's what's going on. That's why custom has a target, right? EFCC has a target. NUPLC has a target. NNPC has a target. Even the agencies that's not supposed to be a revenue facilitating agency, they will now have target, because that's the kind of conversation they're even having in the Senate. If you go to the Senate today as an agency, they are going to ask you, how is this thing going to make this so and so money for us? Just to see the kind of mindset that we have as a country. And you can't go country like that. It's just misguided. Because in reality, the law is on paper that if you are bringing every machinery to the country to add value to things like agriculture and trade, you are supposed to pay zero VAT. It's there. It's right there. It's VAT. It's not in the Finance Act of 2020, and then it's reiterated in the tax reform law of 2025. So you see all this kind of miscommunication and asymmetric policy making when the paper say one thing and the person have to deal with say another thing. What I find quite interesting for me is how this increase in oil price. All African countries are import dependent, and just review how exposed we are. I saw a recent news right now about Dangote refinery, how many African countries like Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and others have fleeing to the refinery to secure gasoline for themselves. East African countries quite interesting, because East African like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and the likes of them, they get their petrol directly from Middle East. They have a long-term agreement. Kenya has a long-term agreement with countries like Saudi Arabia, I think Qatar, and I think one other country. So now that those countries are heavily affected, right, by the whole war in Iran, they of course are going to seek other alternatives. So I see what's going on. For example, Namibia, recently reduced 50% petroleum levy on their petroleum products. The same thing happened in Ethiopia. In fact, Ethiopia was saying, just a minute. Somebody was saying that I think 50 to 60% of their civil servants should stay at home, who are not like essential, right, and work from home. That's like their own policy. And Nigeria, a crude oil producing nation, a nation without any subsidy. By the way, keep in mind that all these countries have subsidy. All of these countries that I just mentioned, South Africa has some subsidy on petrol. In fact, South Africa always announces its own prices. So every first Tuesday of the month, South Africa announces new prices on energy. So all these countries still have their subsidy. Some of them, are increasing subsidy. South Africa is going to increase its own subsidy by I think 15% more, to reduce price on petrol. Then Nigeria is not saying anything. Like the Nigerian government does not even see that this still have impact, on the economy. Now you have a budget forecast of about $65 per barrel, right?
65.
And then the crude. What do you say, Kalu?
64, yeah, about 65, yeah.
$65 per barrel. And the crude oil is now trading around $110 per barrel. And Nigerian sweet crude, Bonny Light sweet crude is trading around $120 per barrel in the global market. That's how high the premium is. And then you have a windfall of about $40 per barrel. So you are earning more than 20. If there is a JV agreement of 30 or 35 to 65, so you are earning more than $15 per barrel extra, based on your budget. Why can't you redirect this on temporary subsidy, some kind of structural relief on the people? You're not even making any provision, any kind of relief, any kind of palliative, any kind of thing. Let's even say no more subsidy. Kalu, you mentioned, for example, recommending that why not give more crude to Dangote? Why not sell Dangote at a cheaper rate? Still minding, the $65 per barrel, and you still retain profit. No, nothing is happening. So you see a point like Namibia removing 50%, Ethiopia saying work from home, South Africa introducing 15%, and Kenya doing all kind of stuff. But we are just have to deal with the huge shock of energy, and then in the next month, NBS is going to come out and say inflation goes up. And what that means in the banking aspect, in the CBN aspect, that we cannot. The era of reducing or maintaining a dovish interest rate is no longer in vogue. We're going to maintain a high interest rate. Last week or so, the capital importation report came out from MBS. Nigeria capital importation grew by 90%. Right? Everybody thought, wow, in between 2024 and 2025. But if you look at that 90%, less than 10%, Kalu, is actually FDI. It's actually a real asset retainable money in the system. Yeah. So Nigeria is actually surviving on loans, on equity, on bonds.
Yes, Cyrus, we shared that chart earlier. We said that I can give you the exact figure. So the point we're making now, Cyrus, is that if the CBN is saying that international oil companies can take their money 100%, and CBN is getting its money from foreign portfolio investments, 82% is foreign portfolio investments. The bulk of that money is going to banks, to financing. Only 3% goes to manufacturing, telecoms 2%, trading 1%, equity 1%. Is there not a risk that oil companies will take their money and go?
Exactly. So you see the kind of mismatch, and I feel like sometimes this government is out of touch with what exactly policies should do, what exactly how should they even react to certain geopolitical issues, and how it affects the average human, average Nigerian pocket. Because whatever you do and you're not upgrading the purchasing power of the people, you are not doing anything, right? And Nigeria used to have what we call excess crude account. The excess in excess crude account is the proceed that comes from whatever windfall we get from the forecast of our crude oil price. And the reason for that, the very objective for creating the excess crude account that started from Obasanjo and linger into Jonathan, was that we can have something that we can fall back to as some kind of fiscal buffer, to provide relief, to provide certain amenities to the people when the rubber hits the road and the whole thing changes. Now conversation around that is no more. What we hear every single day, Carl, is that the revenue to the state government, the revenue to the local government has quadrupled, as though that affects anybody on the street. that does not affect anybody on the street, whether the revenue of the state goes up, or, because where the state spending the money, the state is going to spend the money on things that do not, even if they spend the money on real things, like maybe roads and infrastructure, those things will not have, immediate impact on the livelihood of the people. If you build roads today, the road will not start generating productivity the next day, right? So I'm even assuming that they spend the money on real infrastructure and critical issues. So giving money to governors or giving money to the subnationals is not a direct equivalent of saying that the livelihood of the people living in those places will go up.
Yeah.
So you have to do certain structural things that really help and touch people.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we are just out of touch. If all these other countries are doing this, even Ghana is debating removing petroleum levy. I think they're going to announce it this coming week, on their petroleum petroleum surcharge on their petroleum product, because the prices have gone up, and these are countries that also see the Kalu.
Yeah, but I think for Nigeria, you see what's happening in Nigeria. Let me get a bit to that side. There is so much defense of the government by the suffering citizens that if you say, "Oh, there should be subsidy," people are going to attack you. Why subsidy? I'm reading something on Twitter. Somebody is saying that the Nigerian Federation cannot afford subsidies because it's going to cost us 900 billion. That's what somebody is saying. The person has forgotten that Nigeria is going to increase taxes. We've passed a tax reform, so more Nigerians are going to pay taxes. The tax rate is going to go up.
This one, Kalu, in particular, is not.
But I'm going there. I'm going. I mean, why can't you cannot say that you cannot give a relief to Nigerians? There are many ways you can give relief to Nigeria. You can say VAT for the period of the Iran war is going to go down to 2.5%. That's an instant relief. You can do reverse VAT. If you purchase something, we'll give you back the VAT as cash inflow. You can do many things. You can suspend fees for 3 months to give Nigerians more money to then afford that expensive PMS. If you say PMS is corrupt, there are many things you can do. But like you've said, to say you will do nothing. You've increased taxes. VAT has gone to 7.5. There's going to be more. There's more. The Naira has no subsidy anymore. PMS is flowing straight to the federal government. So the federation, states, federal, local are going to see their revenues go up by almost 112%, right? But the people have not got any increase from 7,000 Naira a month, minimum wage. Consumption is zero. How can any government anywhere say we will not support our people? But if you go tweet that you want a subsidy, who will attack you? Not the government. The people that say they are defending the government will attack you. I tweeted increased salaries in a state. The people in that state attacked me that no, they are okay with low salaries. The tweet is still up. The tweet is still up. It's not. It's true. Google it. You are doing surprise space. Nigerians are. There's something wrong with Nigerians. If Mobutu Sese Seko was from Nigeria, he will still be alive today. He might be dead, but he'll still be alive today, ruling, but he'll be dead. You get what I'm saying? We have an affinity to defend the rich and the powerful. That's Nigeria. That's why there's a problem. Kenya, when this Iran war started, I read last week, Kenya said immediately that they will not increase fuel prices. They are rather going to take a deficit. Why do you think Kenya said that? Because they know in Kenya that if you increase any price, the boys will come back to the streets. So whatever they are doing, they might talk tough, but they know we don't want to have this issue again. And I'm not saying that push you go on the street too, but because the government knows that there's a trigger point. There was a comedy skit done on the comedy skit where the guy did Nigerian youths, Kenyan youths, the youths in Africa. And in Kenya, they took power. The Kenyan guy is tweeted, power must come back in 1 hour or else power came back in 1 hour. They went to other states. When they came to Nigeria, the power went off, Nigerians put generator and were dancing. Power went off, they put generator, they were dancing. What's the message? Nigerian youths are just interested in the dancing. Once we do Afrobeat, we're fine. Once we win up Afrobeat, we're okay. Then generator. Nobody wants to challenge the government. You say, oh, there's no power in Nigeria, let's buy solar. There's no water in Nigeria, put borehole. Schools are bad, private school. Roads are bad, SUV. Nobody wants to hold the government to account. Why are you doing solar when you have oil and gas in your nation? You have coal, Yeah, why isn't the government putting power in the grid? No, everybody should go and buy. You see people on Twitter. You see people will buy solar to their house. They'll be celebrating. Hey, government, f you. I'm no longer using you again. I've left. It's a flex that they've moved to solar. So in Nigeria, it's, I'm out of the bucket. You crabs, you guys stay in the bucket. The irony is lost on them that your government is not giving you power. Then you run and go and get solar. Then you are laughing at other Nigerians. Oh, let's go. Solar generator is one. There's nothing wrong with solar, but you cannot solar your way out of problems. You can't. The country is this debate we're having. I dare you, post on Twitter. Government should subsidize PMS. Post it. If nobody abuses you or defends the government, send me that tweet screen. I'll send you $100. I dare you, post government should subsidize PMS for 24 hours. If nobody abuses you or nobody says, no, we disagree with you, send me that tweet screen. I will send you $100. Open challenge. Try it. Try it. And that tells you the nation you are living in. Everyone in the whole world, even in Iran, they are doing subsidy. But Nigeria, no. You see intellectuals, no, we can't do subsidy. It's 900 billion. We can't afford it. You can't afford 900 billion, but you can afford a brand new private jet. Cyrus is crazy, man. Henry, you've been so patient. Henry Kelechi, thank you so much. Hop in here, Henry.
All right. Thank you so much. Good evening to you all and good day wherever you are. Well, the last speaker has spoken very well with the other speaker too. Well, I just want to add to it. Before you try to solve a problem, because that's what I've been saying in other spaces, before you try to solve a problem, do not create problem trying to solve a problem. Rather, you find solutions to that problem. Go to the deep root of that problem and find the solution to it. Because you can't cut a tree and you're expecting it to not grow while you have not uproot the roots of those trees you've cut down. Okay, back to the conversation. Yeah, thank you for also reminding Nigerians that whatever you do, because of maybe you're trying to make the government improve. Because to me, criticism of government is not because you hate government, but because you want them to improve in their way of governing the people, in their way of making life easy and better. Because they go to all these countries like US and Dubai and the rest, and they see how things work. But they come back here and still impoverish people just because they want to control everybody. Just like you said, you can put up something on Twitter right now about the problems of Nigeria. And before you know it, people will start attacking you from here and there. I believe maybe some people are part of the people that are benefiting from the government. That's why you can see them attack you. Why some that don't even benefit are still attacking? For what reason? Few people that do come and criticize government, it's not because they hate the government. It's because they want the government to improve. The government is doing something, yes, but we need more. Let's take for example, the time that the world had COVID-19. They tried to stop that COVID-19, even right there in the United States. And at the same time, they gave out palliatives. What are the palliatives? They gave out stimulus checks and other things to reduce both the inflation rate, because inflation rate as at that time hits America very hard.
All right.
Their system, the government, they already know what they will do to slow down the inflation of the country.
Yeah, Henry, I mean, I hear you. I think you're making the point that we all agree with. I don't think we're here.
Okay.
People are writing to me on Twitter. I'm not joking. So see, the point is this, right? The government exists for you. You don't exist for the government. yesterday there were already people saying the government is saying pay your taxes. Pay your taxes. This is a Black Swan event.
Can I continue?
If you can round up, I'll love it. Henry, go ahead.
All right, let me round up. So here is now the thing. If, for example, the current government tries to, put a policy which is paying your taxes, yes, it's good to pay taxes, but at the same time, what is the government doing to use those taxes to help the lives of the people? For example, now we've said when our current president was the president of Nigeria as of 2023, up till now, he said fuel subsidy removed. But inside that fuel subsidy that was removed, what have they used that fuel subsidy money to achieve? These are the issues we are supposed to talk about. Have you made use of those funds to help other system that is in Nigeria to function, which is connecting railway to all the host states? It might not be all the 30 states, but all the 3 regions, which is the east, the west, and the north, so that all these farmers production can go through those routes and reach to the places that the huge markets are being traded by all these goods and services. But you cannot see it happen. The electricity, no light. In my place, I'm even trying to on generator and buy fuel, and fuel is even at its peak right now. Okay, now we're talking about the international trade by crude oil per barrel. Have Nigeria tap into that system now, currently now that the Iran and other countries are having those war that make the crude oil to rise just like that? Yeah, the government are not even doing anything. They are even supposed to even give Dangote, since Dangote is the only person that have refinery that can refine crude oil. They can give him and say, okay, we can use your factory to export more products and also give out products to Nigerians first.
All right, Chindu.
Then Dangote can as well make profit through that route.
Yeah. And let us speak on.
So these are the issues and the problems we're trying to talk about. That it's not that we are
criticizing
the government.
Harry, we got to move on.
Let the government to hear us out, and because now we are talking about
Harry, you got to round up.
Something. Yeah,
Harry, you got to round up. Harry, you got to round up. You've got for more 3 minutes, if you don't mind.
All right. So the only thing there is that whatever thing the government is doing, the government needs to put the people first.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can say. Thank you.
Fantastic, Henry. I heard the passion. Chidalo, I'm trying to add you. I cannot add you. I'm not sure what's going on. Cyrus, you've heard a guy on the street there, Henry, talking about the kind of the frustration that they are feeling and all that kind of stuff. I mean, let's talk about Dangote, Cyrus. Dangote is getting only 5 out of 13 whatever crude oil deliveries it needs to refine. So in a fantastic world, it would be that Nigeria will give Dangote crude oil. Nigerian crude oil goes to Dangote. Dangote will refine that crude oil. Then, because crude oil is priced internationally, Dangote still cannot sell that crude oil at a quote-unquote cheap price. So Nigeria will then tell Dangote, okay, see what we're going to do. Because we're giving you crude oil, right? We will want you to export the byproduct from the crude oil. So this NNPC's crude oil we're giving Dangote, sell the byproduct, the aviation fuel, the fertilizer and all, and use that into a special account that you then use to subsidize the PMS you're going to sell to Nigerians that are going to leave your refinery. It's possible because crude oil has many byproducts we're not counting. Will you do PMS, diesel and rest? Tons of byproduct, but Dangote is getting the NNPC allocation. Remember, NNPC has an allocation that is supposed to go to Dangote because there are no NNPC refineries. So that allocation is no longer being used anymore. So where's that allocation? That's what they used to borrow and receive dollars in advance. So the Dangote is not a savior because he's not getting Nigerian crude oil. Rather, Dangote is now importing US crude. And as everyone knows, if you are importing US crude, you are going to then pay US dollars. Brent crude now is about 116. So there's no way you're going to get cheap PMS if Dangote is importing WTI instead of Brent. We dropped the ball. Nigeria dropped the ball. We have no working refineries apart from Dangote. We then got a refinery in Dangote, and we cannot supply Dangote with Nigerian crude oil. We've dropped the ball. Dangote is exporting crude all over Africa, but Nigeria wants to also import PMS. Makes no sense. Why are you giving import licenses when you have an exporter in your country? Makes no sense. I don't know these things too much. I'm not an energy expert, but it doesn't pass the common sense test. Cyrus, what do you think? Chiadol, I'm not sure why I can add you, but yeah. Cyrus, what's your take? Your hand is up, Cyrus. Go for it.
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And to just add to this, many of the importers themselves are even frightened because Nigeria imports most of its petrol from Russia, and given the proxy, effect from Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, petroleum product going or the petroleum product going from there to Russia and China and other places. I read a report recently. I don't know how true it is. I can't confirm independently that Russia is mulling to ban its petrol export.
Yeah,
so
that's
see
true.
many of these.
I read that true, but that got the attacks from Ukraine. Ukraine has attacked their Baltic oil export terminal, so they can't export.
So you could see the effect, the direct effect on Nigerian importers, of petrol. And so the fact that, in a country that like Nigeria, you have a working refinery that has at full capacity, Dangote now, operates around 95 to 97% capacity, that's full capacity in itself. Its chief catalytic unit is now at work. And so if you have that kind of refinery that can supply about 65 million barrels of 5 million liters of petrol per day, and Nigerian consumption, if you want to go with NNDPRA or whatever figure you want to go with, it's about 55 to 60 million barrels per day. So Dangote can supply you at full capacity. You should be intentional about how it gets crude. Beyond just even sourcing crude from WTI, which is the US crude, it's also getting, Nigerian crude from traders, from Vitriol, from Glencore and the likes of them, who got their Nigerian crude from Shell and Total and the likes of them at a very high premium. So I think it's about $2 to $5, per barrel premium. So it's not just only getting WTI, it's also getting Nigerian crude from those traders at a very high premium, because NNPC that's supposed to supply it about 15 cargoes of crude per month is giving it about 500. They're about 20% of what they agree to supply him at Naira for crude. So the whole thing is messed up. You mentioned something about Kenya. Kenya is directly affected by this law, by this particular war, because it actually has a long-term agreement with Saudi and Qatar, right, to get petroleum product for them. So you said Kenya is saying that we are not going to increase price. So if Kenya is going to increase, not going to increase price, it's going to put a high subsidy on its petroleum product.
That's what they're saying. That's what they are saying. They are saying they're going to absorb the deficit, fiscal deficit. Why are they saying so? Why are they saying so? That's my point. Why is Kenya saying that they're going to absorb the fiscal deficit? Because they are, I don't want to use the word afraid, because they are responsive to the youth in Kenya. They know what will happen if prices go up. They know. And I'm being very careful here. I'm not advocating for, but I'm saying if the only thing a democracy should fear is votes, If politicians know, look at America. Let's bring it back. If politicians know that if they do not do good things for the electorate, they will not get re-elected. They will do good things for the electorate. It's because they know that whether they give you cheap petrol or expensive petrol, you are going to vote for them. That's why you have expensive petrol. Again, I'm reading the article by this gentleman on online, Dr. whatever, I don't call his name, right? His argument is very simple. He's saying that the government cannot take 900 billion from FARC and subsidize PMS imports because, according to him, no state can survive with 900 billion leaving. He forgets to mention that this 900 billion only came about because they removed the subsidy in the first place. So now that it's an Iran war, put the subsidy back for 90 days. If you want to be lazy, just put it back for 90 days. I don't want it forever. 30 days.
To even add to it, Kalu, the argument of subsidy removal is that the federal government is going to the capital market to source money to pay for subsidy and then collecting loans to pay for subsidy. But right now, the situation is not the same. The situation is that you have a fiscal space because of the windfall of $40 per barrel that you're getting from body light crude, right? So you are not going to borrow a kobo to pay for subsidy. You're not going to borrow more kobo to pay for the subsidy. And it's not that you are taking the money from a different sector, a different place. You're taking the money directly from the windfall of the crude, to pay for whatever it is that should pay the price at a very reasonable price. So you are not losing a dime, right? So what exactly are you doing with this windfall? That should be the question Nigeria should be asking. You have a huge windfall that comes, unexpectedly comes from, a war that will not last forever. Everybody knows that the Iran war is not going to last forever. Everything's going to be up. What are you doing at this point in time to provide some buffer from the people that are directly hit by this price? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean the benchmark price is cool. Let me get this guy to speak on here. Trying to speak. Chidalo one. Let me just get you to speak. Chidalo, go ahead. I mean benchmark price is there. They haven't touched it. I don't know. Chidalo, go ahead. Chidalo.
Okay, so I just want to say something about economic production in Nigeria. The case is that in any country, even you look at the US and China, where I believe also that China is going to surpass in a sense the US is electricity production and consumption. It is very, very important. What do people say that it is the transportation cost in Nigeria it is energy, it is expensive in Nigeria. Energy is unavailable and energy is expensive. Now, I am an engineer by training. So now I'm looking up to, set up a mini grid. What is required for that now is, as a business, as a mini grid using solar to supply businesses around, it is that you need because I now have to build the whole infrastructure for it, because I cannot rely on the government to do that because of the very nature of having to rely on NEPA to remit you back, your distribution companies to remit you back the money. So the whole total chain of electricity in Nigeria is a problem. That whole chain is a problem. So when we look at energy in Nigeria, it is so high. It is too expensive, because even the transportation, the food cost is directly linked to our energy production, because you need electricity to run those machines to produce things. It is not that you cannot even get food. We don't even need to move the food to Lagos where it is needed. We can process the food locally, but there is no energy. There's no machine. Even if you import the machinery to Nigeria today, there's no energy to run those machines. It will just be there. And using fuel at this time, you see that in this case now, China is laughing because it has already understood that electricity is all and all.
But China is importing his fuel from Russia, Venezuela, and China. Russia is suffering. Venezuela is suffering. Now Iran is suffering.
The fuel China is importing is different. The crude that comes from Venezuela is not the light crude that they use for.
It doesn't matter. It's still oil. Don't get too technical. Don't get too technical. Well, they're not getting it. They're not getting that oil from Venezuela, from Russia, and now from Iran. So they're not really enjoying that much, are they? There are lines in China. I saw fuel lines in China. I saw their fiscal deficit going up. I saw factory output also falling. So they're in serious trouble. The country that is not really suffering too much is the US. The US does not only exports 2% from the Straits of Hormuz. California imports PMS, but they can easily switch over. The US is now a net exporter of LNG, a net exporter of helium, a net exporter of crude oil, which is so now the US controls what goes to China for heliums. What cools the data center? Helium. So the China now has banned critical earth going to the US. US now controls helium. So the data centers in China cannot cool without getting the Kuwaiti helium to flow or the US helium to flow. Do you see where I'm going to with this? This Iran war is not as haphazard as we think. Oh, these guys are really, there are some other things that are happening.
It's a struggle to tie
There
down
you go.
China. To put
There you
China
go.
in
It's a China thing. It's
containment strategy.
exactly. All right, fantastic.
So
yeah.
It just, let me cut it short and just say that I am looking at, in the sense that if Nigeria is to be serious with our electricity production, we have to deregulate the electricity market, which will come at a blow, because that will make electricity available, just like how fuel is available, but it might not be affordable. But because of it has to be a market system. It has to be a market system that somebody can generate electricity, sell it, not having to wait for government subsidies, government loans like the Gencos. What is going on with the Gencos now? So I'm just putting my 2 cents regarding that what is affecting. You can correlate it. It's almost like a correlation. The time our energy production started going down, our standard of living started dropping. At the same time, you can do that one-to-one correlation. So electricity production and our economic development are tied together. It cannot go hand in hand. So thank you, Kalu, for giving me.
Well appreciated. So let's get Ken and we'll wind down, guys. Thanks so much for hopping on here. We'll get Ken, and then once Ken speaks, we'll do a roundup. I think the point I've made that I've tried to make with the presentation is as follows, right? Let's not forget what we're talking about. The CBN has said, let's just do a recap before Ken takes us through. The CBN has said that they want to allow international oil companies export their 100% of their dollar revenues. In the same light, they are saying that they want to, if you get dollar transferred to Nigeria, you'd only get Naira. So you can see 2 conflicting policies there. Number one, Nigeria makes, of course, the bulk of our dollars from the sale of crude oil and gas. So the CBN is saying now, if you sell $1, you can take out $1. Before, if they sold $1, they could take out only 50 cents. The other 50 cents has to stay in Nigeria for a longer time. That boosted the reserves. But the CBN has grown their reserves from about 4 billion in 2023 to about 34.8 billion in 2025. So the CBN feels very, very confident that it can allow monies to go out and that it can replace these monies with the remittances that Nigeria are sending through. Remittances in Nigeria are very, very major. They're about 25 billion every year, 25 billion. Nigeria send money to Nigeria. Those are not investments. Those are welfare payment that Mama Emeka is sending to Emeka in Nigeria. Those are monies that come in, used to feed, to build homes. They're not investments per se, right? So the CBN is looking at tracking remittances by allowing oil company proceeds to go ahead. So that's essentially what they're doing. The risk to that is that, number one, Nigeria is getting its bulk of its monies from foreign portfolio investments, not foreign direct investments, which means that when money comes to Nigeria, it's not buying land or buildings. Foreigners are not coming to Nigeria to buy buildings, land, or businesses. They actually come to Nigeria to invest in Nigerian bonds, because Nigerian bonds pay higher than bonds in their same countries. And some of these bonds are also dollar denominated. So you can come to Nigeria with the same US dollar. If you go to the UK, maybe it's 4%, but in Nigeria, it's 8% dollar. So they come to Nigeria for that. So because that's the big risk for Nigeria, because the dollar has always done better than the Naira. If you look at over 10 years, dollar has done about nearly 900% return on the Naira. Look at 1 year when Trump came to office, the Naira has gained, dollar has fallen as a strategy of the US. If you look at 1 month, it has reversed. People have gone back to safety. So dollar is becoming 1.54% gain. Naira is falling. That's where we are right now. What is the other issue? Nigerian exports of crude oil are not going up. We used to import about 2.6 million barrels in 2006. Today, we're down to about 1.4 million barrels per day. So if you are saying oil companies can take their money out, but we're not bringing enough money through oil exports, that's a big risk. What's the other risk? Food. Nigeria's importing food. We're not making enough food in Nigeria. We've gone from about 2.8 trillion food imports in 2022 to about 7.65 trillion imports in 2025. So we're importing a lot of food. And the problem with food imports is that you can't stop it. You can't say, oh, we're not going to eat. We're going to go on a diet. No, you can't go on a diet. You've got to eat. So because we're importing food, we have insecurity, we have a big problem in that if we can't import food, we're going to be in serious trouble. So we're letting money go out because we can't import food. And the USDA, US Department of Agriculture, is saying that it's not just the insecurity, but the rising costs in Nigeria are stopping farmers from planting. In effect, there's demand for Gary, but farmers are saying because diesel price is so high, fertilizer price is so high, they will not plant cassava. It's too expensive. It doesn't make sense when to plant because if they plant cassava, they lose money. Those are risks that Nigeria has to address in these currency issues. That's what we're talking about, right? I think that's what we're trying to explain in this whole presentation. I don't see Ken. Oh, Ken is here. So Ken, take us home. Take us home. Your final thoughts, and then we'll close down the space. Guys have been here for a long time. We'll let them go. Get ready for Monday. Ken, you've got the mic.
Thank you so much, Kalu. I think a lot has been said. I'm not going to say so much. Nigeria's problem is quite convoluted. You know, you have out of school children and education problem that leads directly to health, and then it leads to energy, and then it leads back to fiscal discipline, and then trade, and then corruption, and then all like that. It's a vicious cycle that continues. Since this topic today is focused on energy, I submitted last week. If we don't have a framework for how we want to assure energy security in Nigeria. And when I say energy in all forms, you need energy to power your business, you need energy to power your home in the form of electricity, you need energy for transportation, and yes, and also your industries and all that, your manufacturing and whatever business you do in Nigeria, you need energy. And looking at the body language of this government, to be honest, Kalu, it's not geared towards that kind of development. This government is more focused on revenue generation, and we can see it in all the policies where it is geared towards. It is geared towards borrowings. It is geared towards taxation, and not a lot in energy. We should have heard of investment by the federal government in the national grid between 2023 and now, maybe going in the region of $10 billion or dollars or more. International loans invested directly in the transmission grid. But we don't even have that. Now we're having another layer of problem, which is gas not being available to the the gencos. How do you explain that? Because at the end of the day, Nigeria is more of a gas nation than even oil. We have more gas than oil. Our reserves shows that we have more gas than oil. So how is it possible that we are not able to supply gas to the power plants that require gas in order to power the whole country? And as a business in Nigeria, whether you are small, you are micro, you are medium, you are large, you are extra large, the moment you are not able to keep your energy costs under control, you risk leaving the country and eventually not being able to even run your business. The small and the micro business, they get thrown out of the window quickly. Their own happen very quickly. And now I was even asking my wife today that how much would bread cost right now with all of this energy costs that is rising and leading directly to inflation and food inflation. To be honest, we need to get our energy security right. We need to have a system. There's nothing wrong in the government subsidizing petroleum products in Nigeria. Absolutely nothing wrong. What we've had in the past is the corruption behind it. How something that is meant to be good for the country, stabilize food prices, was turned into one of the biggest corruption scams this country has ever seen, organized corruption crime that, syndicates that we've ever seen in this country. There's nothing wrong for the government subsidizing, coming at this very point to subsidize fuel. It might not be the direct subsidy that we all know. It might be through different means. It might be providing, vouchers to transportation, operators in Nigeria on a daily basis or monthly basis in a way that they can buy cheaper. If you have your private car, you pay the full price. If you are running transportation business, the way we know our public transportation, the way it is run, it is majorly in the hands of the private sector. Provide vouchers for them so that they can buy lower and you keep costs quite low within this period. But we are not seeing any of that. We are not seeing any relief. Other countries are doing that. Nigeria is one of the countries that increased the price of PMS compared to other countries. When I mean other countries, neighboring countries in Africa, we were the first to increase. And one would ask exactly why did that happen? Why did we have to be that reactive to the Iran war right now going on? To be honest, we need to be able to have stability in this sector. If we cannot control our energy sector, we will continue to have spiraling effect on prices, food prices. And as we know, Nigeria is filled with people who work in the informal sector. I think about 90% of Nigerians work in the informal sector. We need to create that safe space for them where they have certainty over the little money that they earn at the end of the month. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everyone that has spoken. I think it's a very, very connected topic because we can go on and it can take us into energy, it can go into agriculture, into import, a lot of connected tissue here. But again, like I said last week, this is a period of uncertainty. Many folks are here because they want to know what to do with the Naira, what to do with the dollar. In a period of uncertainty, you want to go for safety. If you want to trade, this is your time to trade. You can make billions trading or you can lose billions trading. But in a time of uncertainty, you want to be more assured. Like I said, it doesn't make any sense if Naira is gaining 10,000%, but you can't pay for anything in Naira. It doesn't make any sense. So you are more interested in what can you buy. Look at the world today. Folks have money, they can't buy goods because of the issues. There are no goods to buy. If this continues, hard assets become more important. You're going to see gold becoming more important. You see crypto is nowhere. But dollar, gold, silver are going up because hard assets would rise, will always rise. So just keep that in mind, that the exchange isn't as important as the utility of whatever asset you have. Right now, a bag of rice is more important than Naira paper or even dollar paper, a bag of rice, because that bag of rice, you can do stuff with it. You can exchange it for utility. You can eat it, but paper is paper, right? So just be very careful what you're doing. Long term, if you are an investor, this war will not last, in my belief. I said 1 month last time. Let me think to 3 months. It doesn't last that long because the world cannot take 3 months of no supply of energy. It won't last that long. Somebody has to give up, right? So either there's going to be an agreement or somebody will give up, but it can't last more than 3 months. Which means if you see prices falling today, it's an opportunity for you to buy those good companies. If a company has fallen because they can't get supplies, so investors would sell, this is your chance to pick up those good companies. Remember, you're buying a good company at a lower price. It's like if Messi was playing for Barcelona, then Barcelona was broke and had to sell Messi. Messi is fantastic. You buy him. But you don't want to buy, you don't want to sell a good company because everything is bad. It doesn't make sense. Now that you don't want to buy a cheap company at a cheap price. You want to buy a good company at a cheap price. That's how you make money. So be very, very clear allied on what your goal is. If you're a long-term guy, this is the market's a buy for you. If you're a short-term trader, you're a different animal. Don't borrow. Be very careful about leverage because the market can turn on a dime. You might see an opportunity today, Trump will tweet and you're in a lot of pain. So be very, very careful. Know your objective. Know if you're an investor long-term or if you're a trader as a scalper, and then take those moves accordingly, right? Fantastic, guys. So I'll see you guys next week. We'll have on that guy come talk to us and all that. Or we'll have a topic we'll really talk about. We're always here 7 p.m. West African time. We're talking money, the economy, and of course, finance. It's been a fantastic session. The tweets are there, visuals are there for you guys to listen to after the space. We do record this space on the podcast. It's called The Way I See It. Title is on the Twitter handle there. If you also want to just go to my website. It's kaluaja.org. The tweets are there, the podcasts are there, YouTube, Instagram, they're all there. So you can get everything there, right, guys? So you can all follow. And most, of course, try to get the book. I did write a book. Let's Talk About Your Money. It's about personal finance. Wrote it with concepts globally, but Nigerian in mind. So we have a lot of things that are just Nigerian peculiar. How to invest. We name the stocks. We name the bonds. We name the mutual funds. It's not theoretical. It's very, very practical. Get it. You would love it. It's only on Amazon, right? That's fantastic. All right, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much. You guys have a fantastic day, and bye.